Chapter 2699. Wei Wei Bai looked up, and her eyes lit up. She immediately asked, "Who helped?" Yu Xiaoyan couldn't help but laugh. "Of course it's the group of people you locked up. Otherwise, why would I be so carefree? However, to win over this group of people, I spent about 6 years. To transform the industry, I also connected with the foreign market 4 years in advance." At this point, he was silent for a while before he said in a low voice, "Although I'm not as busy as you, I spend more time than you, and my life is much more dangerous than yours." Wei Wei Bai was about to sneer and retort. However, she saw a rare, serious expression in the man's eyes under his eyelashes. His words were light, but every sentence was heavy. In the Bai family, I was stepping on a steel wire. I was pulling out my backbone. I was suppressing my self-esteem and humanity as a person. No one has suffered more than me, Wei Wei. Wei Wei Bai fell silent. Yu Xiaoyan smiled helplessly. "You have suffered a little. You pretended to be crazy and lived in a world of resentment. But I can't. Old Master Bai needs me to be a qualified young master. He needs me as a living signboard." This was the meaning of his life. Old Master Bai killed his most loyal old subordinate who had sacrificed the most for him. This was more than chilling. If Old Master Bai didn't raise him well and let others see that the death of his old subordinate was just an accident, and his child lived a noble and beautiful life, then how could he appease people? Yu Xiaoyan's voice was soft. "So if I'm crazy, I'll have no value. I can only slap Old Master Bai's face. If I have ambitions, I can only die. If I'm not good enough, I'll wait to be abandoned." He wanted him to become good and outstanding. He wanted people to know that the Bai family treated him well. He also wanted him to become mediocre and not be allowed to be dissatisfied with the Bai family and have any thoughts of resistance. The path he walked was one that could drive people crazy. All these years, he had almost divided himself. He had a kind and gentle appearance, but inside, he was calculating and dark desires. It was like a spider that didn't move at all. Using the weakest threads to weave a net, it finally revealed its ferocious face and completely devoured the Bai family. This was more than just frightening. It could be said that every step was fatal. Wei Wei Bai held the document and looked at him without moving her eyes. Yu Xiaoyan, on the other hand, was leisurely. His movements were graceful as he gently poured tea for himself with a purple clay teapot. Then he held the teacup and smiled. "What's wrong? Are you scared? Don't be afraid. Didn't I castrate the Bai clan and put in your hands? Everything you have right now is safe." Of course, it was because he was by her side that she felt so safe. No matter what, he was the one who had plotted to get all these properties, and the people were all his. Then, even if the industry was transferred, the people's hearts would not be transferred. Wasn't it because he was here that the people below were willing to bring up the project proposal? After all, who didn't know that Yu Xiaoyan had lost his head over a woman? To make her happy, he would throw away thousands of gold and abandon his career. Therefore, even if she took everything from him, she would still be his woman. What she had was still his label. Before she made any big moves, everyone still thought that the company belonged to Yu Xiaoyan. Yu Xiaoyan didn't say these things. He also didn't let people say it. His fingertips gently touched the edge of the teacup, and his eyes were full of affection. He was worried that he would hurt her and make her feel even more unbalanced. This way, she would find him even more unpleasant to the eye. Fast //. Chapter 2700. Yu Xiaoyan stole a glance at Wei Wei Bai. He found the girl lying on the document. Under her thick eyelashes, her round eyes were filled with infatuation. Her eyes were filled with love and admiration. Yu Xiaoyan's fingertips paused, and his breathing slowly became hot. The girl seemed to have suddenly noticed his gaze and immediately looked away. The infatuation from before disappeared. She muttered, "Didn't you destroy the Bai family? You're so happy about your revenge. Why are you acting pitiful?" Yu Xiaoyan drank his tea unhurriedly. When his lips touched the tea, he couldn't help but smile. Oh, she was smart. She knew that he was acting pitiful. Unfortunately, someone was still moved. Yu Xiaoyan thought about the infatuation in her eyes just now. He didn't know how long she had been secretly in love with him. That was why she targeted him so much and wanted to be as strong as him. So many people bullied her, but she didn't resent them. She only resented him for neglecting her. Wasn't it because she cared too much about him that she missed him so much? Yu Xiaoyan couldn't help but think, when did she start to miss him? How long had she missed him? All these years, there were too many people who liked him and even risked their lives for him. Instead, he had never noticed her in the corner, curled up in the darkness. Yu Xiaoyan's heart ached when he thought of this. This kind of pain was actually very painful. He pondered for a long time before he realized that this kind of pain was pity and regret for missing out on her. Suddenly, he heard Wei Wei Bai throw the document on the ground. What's written on this? Are the people under you illiterate? I want to fire them. Yu Xiaoyan said, yes, you can fire them. This calm attitude made Wei Wei Bai speechless. She couldn't say anything. Yu Xiaoyan said very politely, do you want me to write a notice or something for you? Wei Wei Bai grabbed the document and covered half of her face. Her two big round eyes stared at him. It was as if she was observing if there was something wrong with him. Yu Xiaoyan pursed his lips and smiled, looking elegant and gentlemanly. What? What else do you need me to do? Wei Wei Bai's long eyelashes drooped down, covering the light in her eyes. Yu Xiaoyan, have you liked me for a long time? When Yu Xiaoyan heard this, his eyes lit up, and he looked exceptionally beautiful. But he didn't say anything. Wei Wei Bai said, otherwise, why are you so obedient? Or are you trying to gain my trust so that I will release your rude subordinates? Yu Xiaoyan's expression became even gentler. The man's deep affection in his eyes was thick and soft, doting and indulging. He leaned against the chair, his fingers suddenly clasping the armrest of her chair, pulling her and the chair over so that they were pressed against each other. Wei Wei Bai was in a daze, holding a pile of folders in her hands. She frowned and was about to protest. Yu Xiaoyan asked softly, why have you been staring at my mouth since this morning? Wei Wei Bai's expression suddenly changed. She couldn't help but look at his lips again. The thin red color was stained with the moisture of the tea, adding a layer of delicate soft light. The man's appearance was too elegant, and there was a sense of clean abstinence. So just a little bit of temptation would be magnified 10 times. Wei Wei Bai only stared for 2 seconds before she immediately looked away, her face turning red. Why are you looking at your mouth? It's because you've been eating since this morning. Yu Xiaoyan was used to enjoying himself. After breakfast, he liked to eat some fruits. /T. Chapter 2701. After eating the fruit, he came to work with her. Seeing that she was tired out and was watching a show, he had to make tea and was idling by the side. Yu Xiaoyan lowered his eyes, and his voice was slightly hoarse. Do you want to eat too? Wei Wei Bai threw the document on the table, then leaned back in her chair and placed her hands in front of her chest. The arms that stretched out from the sleeves of the cheongsam were white and pink. It could be seen that she had indeed been fattened up by him recently. Her pearl-colored skin was so delicate that people couldn't help but want to touch it. Bai Weiwei was like a grandpa. Her sweet, tender, and delicate voice was raised quite a bit. If I want to eat, you can still feed me. Yu Xiaoyan's smile deepened. He opened his thin lips slightly and licked his lower lip with the tip of his tongue. The man's clean expression was instantly replaced by an evil charm. How do you want me to feed you? Wei Wei Bai was stunned. The man's hand had already touched her arm. The soft skin on her arm felt numb under his fingertips. Soon, he saw that there was an additional layer of light pink on her fair skin, like a lotus petal that had not withered, soft, thin, and warm. Yu Xiaoyan did not have the appearance of a graceful and elegant young master. His body was almost leaning out diagonally. That pair of light and warm eyes were replaced by a strong burning heat at this moment. His every word carried a sense of coercion. What do you want me to feed you? Wei Wei Bai leaned against the back of the chair tightly and stared at him with wide eyes. She seemed to be frightened. However, Yu Xiaoyan's fingertips touched her chin. His fingertips rubbed against the skin of her chin and gradually increased the strength. Finally, the fingertips came to her lips. Yu Xiaoyan's eyes curved slightly. The clean and beautiful man was bewitching and evil at this moment. He was like a ghost peeping in the dark, quiet and harmless. However, after seeing what he wanted, he finally showed the strength to attack, wanting to pull the temptation into his arms and tie it up. Wei Wei Bai was like a pitiful little sacrifice, curled up in the chair and shivering. She was so scared that the pink color on her face disappeared. She continued to sneer. Do I need to say what I'm going to say? How are you going to serve me if you don't even know what to do? You can go and find out what I like to eat. Yu Xiaoyun's eyes became much more profound and obscure. He said slowly, yes, I should ask around. After saying that, he obediently let go of her hand and sat back down. He even moved his chair away. The stalemate between the two of them was finally over. Wei Wei Bai heaved a sigh of relief. She reached out and took the document. Just when she thought that she was safe, a voice came from behind her. However, she heard Yu Xiaoyun casually ask, do you like osmanthus cake? It's made from fresh osmanthus flowers that were just harvested this year. Wei Wei Bai was also hungry, and she had been brewing for a long time. Yu Xiaoyun should also do something, such as feeding her a piece of cake with his hand. Feeding pastries was no different from feeding rice. He could also explain the side quest. Therefore, she nodded without warning. In the blink of an eye, she saw Yu Xiaoyun take a small bite of the pastry. The powder of the pastry stained his lips. It was very tempting. Wei Wei Bai, Yu Xiaoyun also smiled. Then he reached out and pressed her neck, turning her upper body. He also lowered his head. The taste of the pastry. It was sweet and soft. There was the fragrance of osmanthus flowers, so fragrant that it made people's scalp tingle. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 80/T. Chapter 2702. Feeding to increase favorability. Feeding to make the male protagonist stronger and the host weaker and more pitiful. This was not the main female protagonist strategy route of the side quest. The side quest looked at the list of small tasks completed one by one. It felt that it was beginning to doubt Ji Sheng. The system patted its head and comforted it. You'll get used to it. After that, the system continued to gnaw on the duck feet in the side quest refrigerator. It had recently gained weight. Eat some claws to aid digestion. Side quest. Damn it. Did this host system not know the virtue of shame? Wei Wei Bai listened to the sad conversation between the side quest and the system, her face indifferent. She was used to it. No matter how much the main system's lackeys, side quest, destroyed her, she was still the most beautiful flower in the storm. She went with the wind and waves. She stood tall. Wei Wei Bai, ha ha ha, I am a pitiful, peerless, and independent beauty. Side quest. Ugh. It was wrong. These two guys did not want Face. Face was not worthy of them anymore. Wei Wei Bai had just finished laughing when she saw Yu Xiaoyun, who was sleeping on the chair and covering the book, suddenly twitch his fingers. It seemed that he was having a nightmare. She frowned and reached out to gently press down on his hand. Then she took away his book, revealing his pale face. If it was before, he would wake up with this little movement. But this time, he obviously fell into a deeper nightmare and did not wake up. Wei Wei Bai whispered softly, Yu Xiaoyun? The man lying on the chair suddenly opened his eyes. His calm and gentle eyes were now occupied by coldness and a trace of fear. He saw the girl next to him, holding his fingers with both hands. The girl's tender face had worry and fear that could not be put away in time. In an instant, the coldness that broke free from the nightmare was warmed by her worried eyes. Yu Xiaoyun seemed to be relieved. His face had a sickly white color. He suddenly murmured in a low voice, Hug me. Wei Wei Bai was stunned. His cold fingers had already clasped her fingertips. It was like begging. His face was expressionless, and his voice had no waves. But there was a sense of vulnerability. Hug me, Wei Wei. Wei Wei Bai squatted by the chair, just enough to reach out and hug his waist. She hesitated for a moment and finally leaned her face on his leg, just like in the past. She laid on his body lazily like a cat, his fingers, and did not let go. The intimate and somewhat awkward posture, but it was undoubtedly exceptionally beautiful. Suddenly, a forceful kiss came from the top of her head. Yu Xiaoyun had already bent down and lowered his head. He lowered his eyes and kissed her hair. His fingers also started to warm up. The man who walked out of the nightmare did not need to face again. Calm, the first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was the girl's worried expression. He walked out of the darkness and actually stopped taking pictures. He had struggled in the Bai family for too long. Although he looked fine on the outside, his insides were already riddled with holes. He thought that he was attached to power and loved it. Only then did he try his best to bring the Bai clan under his control. But when everything was on the right track, his career began to take a turn for the better. But the nightmares were becoming more and more frequent, and the split in his heart was becoming more and more serious. It turned out that power was just a straw for him to redeem himself. Now that he had this straw in his hand, he knew that he could not stop himself from sinking. His resentment and self-loathing still existed. It turned into a terrible nightmare that haunted him. The evil self in the dream had already begun to dismember him. He was in too much pain. He longed for someone to hug him and hold him all the time. /fast to read / /fast to TXT, download fast to read on. Fast, comma. Chapter 2703. It prevented him from falling into the nightmare of splitting and dismembering himself. The girl's body finally made him feel warm. His breath was filled with her fragrance. He whispered, "Really, I like you very much." Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 85. Wei Bai narrowed her eyes. She felt that this favorability came too easily, but she also felt that the other party was just too fragile. So a hug could move him? Wei Bai thought of this and didn't move, continuing to lean on him. She wanted to see if she could get some more favorability. And Yu Xiaoyan also liked the way she relied on him. The two of them were very quiet in a pile of documents. The scene was very warm. The system patted the head of the branch again. The branch said Wei Bai said that she hugged Yu Xiaoyan for a long time, although she didn't get any favorability. But in the end, when she got off work, he actually tidied up all her documents and gave the orders that should be given. Those that should be solved were solved, and those that should be signed were signed by her. Everything was using 1/10 of the time she did. Although Wei Bai deliberately let him work and deliberately let him do the work, she really couldn't solve so many things as quickly as Yu Xiaoyan, and it looked like he was doing it with ease. She finally knew why he didn't look very busy, because he worked at an inhuman speed. When she returned home, Love Garden was still very bleak. The cold wind and the cold leaves blew, and the quiet Bai family mansion was like a gorgeous seabed tomb. Only one room was lit up, and there was a sign of life. Yu Xiaoyan stood at the door, wearing light blue cotton casual clothes. He quietly looked at the silent Love Garden, his eyes silent. Suddenly, he heard the bathroom door open. His eyes flashed, and finally there was a trace of warmth. Yu Xiaoyan turned around and took a towel. He walked in front of Wei Bai, who had just come out, and pressed the towel on her head. Her beautiful long hair was very long. It wasn't easy to wipe it, but Yu Xiaoyan didn't feel annoyed at all. He looked at that white and cute little face and the messy wet hair and only wanted to kiss it. Of course, he didn't reveal this intention. He didn't even touch her much. It was like self-abuse. Just like that, he held her and spoiled her. He let her do whatever she wanted, riding on him like a fox. Yu Xiaoyan dried her hair and carried her to the rocking chair. The young girl obediently sat on the chair. Her feet were touched by him, but he didn't mind and gently wiped her feet for her. At this moment, she was like a cute kitten, looking at him with narrowed eyes. As the chair rocked back and forth, she rested her hands on the chair, looking as innocent as a child. Yu Xiaoyan helped her put on her cotton shoes and poured her a cup of honey water. Wei Bai held the honey water and felt that Yu Xiaoyan had done a really good job. Too good. If he didn't know about his previous behavior, those who didn't know better would think that he was born to be a servant. Yu Xiaoyan was obedient. He took out a book and said, "Today, we're learning about human resources management." Bai Wei immediately nodded, her pair of squinted eyes widening. When a man saw her like this, he couldn't help but smile. Then, he told her in a low voice about the complexity of the company's human resources, the relationship between people, and the intricate interests of each department. Even though it was obviously very difficult, he could always easily explain it to her. After Wei Bai heard this, she couldn't help but frown in confusion. The Hainan Airlines project has been stopped. Is it a big blow to the company? Chapter 2704. Yu Xiaoyan said unhurriedly, "Yes." Wei Wei Bai. Then the company is going bankrupt? Yu Xiaoyan. If the Hainan Airlines project is stopped, half of it will indeed go bankrupt. Wei Wei Bai drank a mouthful of honey water and pursed her lips, looking dissatisfied. Yu Xiaoyan looked at her with a hint of interest in his lazy eyes. Why? Don't you want to go bankrupt? Wei Wei Bai swallowed the water and almost choked herself to death. She gasped and said, "You worked so hard to get it." Yu Xiaoyan dragged out his last word meaningfully. "Oh, I got it." Wei Wei Bai realized that she was too anxious. She immediately straightened her face. "The company is mine now. How can I squander it if it goes bankrupt? I still want to live a good life." Yu Xiaoyan pursed his lips and smiled. His cold and elegant appearance had a hint of amiable gentleness. Good life? What kind of good life? Tell me. Wei Wei Bai looked at him sideways. She was about to say something, but paused. Instead, she regained her senses and bit her red lips. Then, she imitated his hypocritical look and glanced at him. Her clear eyes intertwined with a clear and delicate charm. The look in her eyes made people feel itchy. "What does it have to do with you?" She pretended to be calm, but she couldn't help being a little girl. She was unspeakably cute. Yu Xiaoyun's eyes heated up, but his tone was still calm. "It's okay. Apart from our huge loss if the Hainan Airlines project is stopped, there are also a few partners who signed the contract. Their losses are also huge. If this project fails, we will only be half bankrupt, but they will be bankrupt." Yu Xiaoyun said this and supported his chin with his hand. There was a hint of stunning sharpness in his lazy eyes. "So, you have to protect yourself well." Wei Wei Bai blinked innocently. "Protect herself?" Yu Xiaoyun's soft lips moved slightly. "Because you caused the project to fail, you are the enemy of many, many people. Spider's actions were all planned out. How could he not drag others down with him for such a big project? He gave himself a way out. He did lose a lot if the project stopped, but it wasn't the most anxious, because those who had signed the contract were more anxious." Yu Xiaoyan looked at Wei Wei Bai, who was still confused, and sighed helplessly. "You're really a child?" She was indeed quite young at this age. She was so young that he couldn't bear to. Bai Wei Wei sneered, but her eyes were exceptionally clear and bright, with a lively aura. "I'm not you. I am a woman." The girl's smiling face as she sat on a rocking chair was so beautiful that people couldn't take their eyes off her. Yu Xiaoyan only felt that the hidden impulse in his heart was climbing up bit by bit. He smiled and didn't comment, but his eyes fell on her ankle. They were as fragile as the bones of a butterfly's wings, easily broken with a pinch. But Yu Xiao, the Hainan Airlines project, was stopped, and the biggest business partner demanded an explanation. Yu Xiaoyan indicated that to appease them, they had to hold a meeting first. As long as it was within half a year, the losses could be controlled. Wei Wei Bai planned to control it for 3 months. Only 2 months had passed. The only thing left on the side mission list was to give her a massage and admit that she was amazing. None of them were difficult. Because there was still time, Wei Wei Bai didn't force Yu Xiaoyan to do them. The right time to do these missions was a matter of interest. Chapter 2705. It wouldn't drop the favorability. It wasn't easy to maintain the favorability of Yu Xiaoyan, a man with a spider-like personality. The meeting was held as planned. At the restaurant on the clouds last time, Yu Xiaoyan was still sitting in the second seat. Wei Wei Bai already had some of his composure. She sat calmly. A total of 8 people came to the meeting. They were the elites sent by the company that cooperated with the Hainan Airlines project. Wei Wei Bai was very calm and took out the prepared speech. There were major omissions in the Hainan Airlines project, and it needed to be re-examined. The restarting event was about a month later. Everyone who came to the meeting agreed. The scene was very harmonious. Yu Xiaoyan leaned back in his chair and looked at the scene with a strange and quiet gaze. He seemed to have discovered something, but also seemed to be waiting for something. The meeting ended, and everyone stood up to leave. Wei Wei Bai also stood up. Her attitude was natural and generous. The other party reached out to shake her hand. She didn't think much about it and reached out to shake it. However, A hand came across the air and held the other party's hand. It was Yu Xiaoyan, he said calmly and elegantly. I look forward to the cooperation when the project restarts. The other party smiled and said, Of course, of course. As soon as he finished speaking, everything happened so fast that it was terrifying. The other party had already taken out a palm thunder and pulled Yu Xiaoyan over with lightning speed. Wei Wei Bai's expression changed drastically, and she reached out to stop him. Everything was too late. The palm was already pressed tightly against Yu Xiaoyan's neck. Everyone collectively retreated. The leader, who was happy in the meeting, just now looked at Wei Wei Bai coldly. The Hainan Airlines project must be restarted immediately. We don't accept any delay in time. Wei Wei Bai's pupils constricted. Her body trembled, and she almost couldn't stand. However, she quickly held on and said coldly in a trembling voice, Let go of him, or you won't be able to walk out of here alive. The leader in the meeting shouted ferociously, I can walk out of here as long as I have Yu Xiaoyan's life. There is a Hainan Airlines project on the table. You're in charge now. If you want to live, sign for me immediately. I want the Maritime Navigation Project to start. This is our only request. We won't accept any damn delays. Wei Wei Bai clenched her fists, her eyes cold. You're threatening me with his life? These words were said harshly. The usually slender and cute girl's face was now cold and full of killing intent. Even Yu Xiaoyan's calm expression was somewhat moved when he saw her crazy appearance. But he didn't say anything. Instead, he quietly stared at her with an unusually secretive gaze. He seemed to want to know what her choice was. The leader shouted fiercely, Nonsense! You know how valuable Yu Xiaoyan's life is. If he dies, you'll be nothing. Bai Wei Wei's originally pale face, at this moment, was even paler, with a kind of frightening resentment. She stood by the table, her fingers propped up on the table. On her face, only her lips were bright red, as if they were stained with blood, but also as if they were on fire. The young girl's expression had never been so fierce, so miserable. Her voice was as soft as silk and as cold as ice. Do you think I care about him? I'm in charge now. I won't start the project he started. I won't save his life. The last sentence was said with incomparable ruthlessness. The young girl's eyes were red, but it wasn't because of tears of fear. It was because of hatred. This hatred came from a Bai family, from the anger of being bullied since childhood, and from the pain of being neglected. Chapter 2706. Yu Xiaoyan stared at her without blinking. He didn't miss the trembling of her fingers as she pinched her palm. He also didn't miss the strength that she wanted to rush over at any time. Although it was suppressed, it seemed that her limbs were struggling abnormally. He lowered his eyes slightly and sighed inaudibly. Then he moved his fingertips, which seemed to be a secret signal. The person holding him hostage immediately sneered, I don't believe you. I'll give you 3 days. If you don't sign, I'll send Yu Xiaoyan's body to your door in 3 days. Leave. Just like that, they held Yu Xiaoyan hostage and walked out. Wei Wei Bai, who was standing by the table, had a change in expression. She seemed to want to chase after them, but she was extremely hesitant. Yu Xiaoyan saw from the corner of his eye that the redness at the corners of her eyes had finally turned into tears of fear and grievance. She was like an abandoned cat, exceptionally pitiful. Yu Xiaoyan was taken into the car, and the car drove out quickly. The people in the car were very quiet for a moment. Yu Xiaoyan also sat casually. The person who was extremely arrogant just now had already handed over the weapon to him obediently. Then he asked casually, Brother Yu, why are you acting like this? Yu Xiaoyan looked at the scenery outside the car window. The light fell on his snow-white and delicate face, making his expression even clearer and quieter. He said in a low voice, I just want to give her a choice. The person who helped was extremely puzzled. Yu Xiaoyan smiled. Choose me, or choose the country I built. If Wei Wei Bai had signed her name just now, it would be equivalent to her giving up everything she pursued and choosing him. If she hadn't chosen to sign her name, she would have given up on him. Yu Xiaoyan looked outside with a deep gaze, thinking about her pitiful appearance before she left. It seems that she lost the bet. She still prefers my business, not me. One immature cat. But he couldn't hate her. Maybe it was because she was too immature, so when she made a mistake, he also thought that it would be good if he could forgive her. The person beside him immediately said, "It hasn't been 3 days yet, right? She might change her mind in 3 days." Women are all like this. They change their minds every day. No other emotions could be seen from Yu Xiaoyan's expression, but there was a trace of gentleness in his cold eyes. His eyes, which were originally filled with deep emotions, were as beautiful as a spring breeze brushing past the willows. I hope so. Of course, if she still chooses her career, I won't blame her. Who asked me to spoil her so much? Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 80. 5 points down. Wei Weibai looked at her own hand and said with a trembling voice, "Damn, Yu Xiaoyan's hand is too fast. I thought I could grab that guy's hand and then pull him over to snatch the weapon from his arms." She had long felt that the atmosphere was not right. Tell the system to be careful. He didn't expect to see a weapon in his opponent's hand. What was even stranger was that there were no bullets in the weapon. Wei Weibai, who had always been very sensitive to schemes, immediately contacted Yu Xiaoyan. He realized that this could be one of his schemes. Therefore, she planned to expose the fact that the other party had a weapon. However, he was not as fast as Yu Xiaoyan. Just like that, Yu Xiaoyan was one step ahead of him. He made a cliché, "If you don't choose anything, you will kill whoever you want." He didn't care about the streets. If this was a normal situation, it would be a gift of favorability points. However, when the other party asked her to choose to sign immediately, the side mission reminded her that if she signed immediately, it was guaranteed that she would fail and be disfigured in minutes. Listening to the side mission's arrogant laughter, Wei Weibai withered. The system said, "He can still be saved. Can't we just save the target in 3 days?" Wei Weibai said, "Save my ass. Yu Xiaoyan is very safe. It just needs my attitude. I have failed to activate the side mission. If I don't activate it, I will face the risk of Yu Xiaoyan's favorability dropping to 0. At this point, Wei Weibai paused. She said with a heavier tone, "And the main mission will fail. Because for a man like Yu Xiaoyan, once he failed to open the door to his heart, there would not be a second chance." The system felt that with its host's ability, it might not be that bad. It was about to comfort her. But it hurt again. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 75. The system, Wei Weibai said, "This hypocrite says that he doesn't care. Once he really doesn't care, his favorability will drop endlessly." The system said, "How about just torture him?" By Wei Wei. At the / crossover system, Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www. Sashu, download the read the full text. 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 To make it easier for you to read it next time, you can click the button at the bottom to record the reading record. The book, please recommend it to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Chapter 2707. The System's Suggestion. Wei Weibai thought for a while, then nodded. Torture is good. Give me a terminal illness pill or something. I'll be miserable after eating it. The system, Wei Weibai, have you used terminal illness before? The system, what illness have you not used before? Venereal disease. Wei Weibai touched his chin. Then forget it, it's too old-fashioned. The system was shocked. Didn't you say the older the better? Wei Weibai, the time is still to be determined. If it's really terminal illness, I'll die and become a ghost and still follow Yu Xiaoyan around every day. I'll be bored out of my mind. It was good to have more people. They could jump, play, and act. As a ghost, she floated around Yu Xiaoyan miserably every day, watching him eat, drink, and play. She was sullen. Wei Weibai asked again, "What is Yu Xiaoyan doing now?" The system was silent. Then the host was silent too. Oh, it seemed like the system's monitoring device was broken. Yu Xiaoyan being held hostage completely made all the employees panic. During the transition period of the business, the loss of more than half of the elite leadership was already unstable enough. In the end, the most important backbone was missing. This time, everyone was not doing it. Yu Xiaoyan's woman was not useful. After all, Yu Xiaoyan was the one who fought for this country. Everyone was holding hands and following him. They only respected this one boss. The boss was gone. Any signature was useless, especially when the country had just been established. It was not stable yet, and there were veterans around. Everyone did not recognize anything. They only recognized the person who led them, Yu Xiaoyan. If it was a few more years, when the group was stable, everyone would be at ease. At that time, if someone else was leading, there would not be such a big backlash. But now, Yu Xiaoyan's reputation was at its peak. Even if he announced that his woman was in charge, no one would take it seriously. They would just mistakenly think that Yu Xiaoyan had never been in a relationship before and suddenly gave away the country because of love. Everyone laughed and did what they were supposed to do. Who to listen to was still Yu Xiaoyan's words. As for the woman he liked, they just had to give her some respect. It was impossible for them to be obedient. Once Yu Xiaoyan disappeared, the huge network of connections he had would also fall apart. All kinds of schemes, all kinds of resistance, all kinds of threats appeared in front of Wei Bai. Before Wei Bai went back, she had already placed all kinds of threatening things on her desk. For example, blood-stained animals, weapons without bullets, poison daggers, and so on. Wei Bai looked on expressionlessly. She even had the strength to throw those things into the trash can. In the office, her slender figure on the wide desk seemed to be a little fragile. But when she picked up the dead rabbit and threw it into the trash can, there was a sharp tenacity in her eyes. There was a trace of insanity in her beauty. It was as if he wanted to walk all the way to the end and did not intend to care about Yu Xiaoyan's life. As Wei Bai walked out step by step, she suddenly saw a tassel on the spot where Yu Xiaoyan was sitting. It was the purple crystal on the front of her Chong Sam. She stopped in her tracks and looked at it for a long time before she reached out to pick it up and put it back on the Chong Sam. It was as if she was sentimental. Her fingertips gently stroked it. There was clearly no expression, but there was an indescribable loneliness and pity. Then, Wei Bai straightened her back and went out again. The red light on the office surveillance camera flashed. After Wei Bai walked out, she reconfirmed with the system where there was no surveillance camera and where there was surveillance camera. // Fast! Chapter 2708. The system said, "Are you afraid that the male lead will check the surveillance cameras in the future?" So, even when there were surveillance cameras, she still did her best to act. Wei Bai said leisurely, "No, he's watching me from behind the cameras." Yu Xiaoyan was a man with strong control and a strong desire for control. How could he not be in control of everything around him at all times? Everything around him, including her. So, there was no way to confirm where Yu Xiaoyan was. So, she could only start to think about whether he was monitoring her. There was a high probability that he was. Especially when the favorability dropped to 73, she was scared when she saw the weapon that someone gave her. Then, the favorability went back to 75. She was sure that the pervert Yu Xiaoyan was spying on her in the dark. And because she was in pain, he was happy. Fuck this pretentious, shameless, black-hearted little bastard. Not behind the cameras, she walked around the world upside down. Wei Bai heard the system's reminder that there was a camera in front. When she walked around the corner, her expression changed from calm to pain. Of course, this pain was gone in a flash. Even the mist in her eyes was wiped away by her carelessly. This small action was casually captured by the camera. But she didn't seem to know it all. Leaving with her back to the camera, her posture was still straight, filled with an indescribable sense of bleakness and fragility. Temperament was something that could be very helpful at times. Especially when she needed pity, she didn't even need to pretend. Even if she kept a straight face, others would feel that she was very pitiful. It saved her trouble and effort. Wei Bai came to the car. The driver was still waiting. She didn't think much and got into the car directly. In the end, not long after the car started, suddenly, with a bang, the car flipped over. The driver rebelled. He thought that Wei Bai was a demon. She caused the death of his boss. He wanted to drag Wei Bai down with him. Wei Bai, in the system, he had been too pretentious and was caught off guard by a cannonball. He was a little stunned for a moment. Wei Bai although I know that the driver is dissatisfied with me, I thought he just wanted to threaten me, such as giving me a headless rabbit. The system said, come, take the life subsistence allowance. You're lucky, you only hit your head, it's not a big deal. Wei Wei Bai said, wait, why do I feel like my face is bleeding? The system said, that's just a small wound, just a scratch. It's fine. Wei Wei Bai, I'm disfigured. He felt that a concussion was more frightening than a disfigurement. In the wealthy district of the suburbs, there was an inconspicuous villa that was extremely quiet. On the flat lawn, there was an unusually well-maintained garden, a beautiful fountain, and a commonly seen angel statue. Under the sun, it looked expensive and nothing special. On the second floor, on the huge balcony, a man in black silk pajamas walked barefoot across the smooth, cold marble floor. Yu Xiaoyan's face was pale and haggard. He had a terrible headache. After leaving Wei Wei Bai, he couldn't even take a nap. Nightmares and darkness seemed to have spread from his dreams to reality. He even occasionally looked into the mirror and saw an evil face appear behind him. It was a projection of him in the dark. Yu Xiaoyan poured a cup of hot tea. Then he turned around, and his slender figure disappeared behind the window glass. He walked into a deeper room. There were surveillance cameras everywhere. // Chapter 2709. In the picture, Wei Wei Bai lowered her head and stared blankly at the lapel that had fallen on the chair. Her beautiful neck looked even whiter against her black hair, but it also made her look even more slender. She was so fragile that she would break with a pinch. And when she saw the dead animals, the table was full of blood. She was so scared, but she tried her best to hold on. Her pale face and trembling fingers unconsciously looked for his eyes. She was too pitiful. She was also too cute. Yu Xiaoyan lowered his eyes and looked at the tea. In the curling mist, his handsome face looked abnormally hazy and empty. Leaving her, he was not doing well. The only thing that made him happy was that she left him. He was not doing well either. Yu Xiaoyan knew from the beginning that she was impatient and loved and hated him at the same time. This reckless personality was when he forced her to choose. How could she calm down? So the pain that she endured for many years and the crazy desire for power took over. That was why she chose his career and gave up his life. Yu Xiaoyan knew that this was not what she wanted. She liked him, and he could sense it. But so what? What he wanted was not only like, but only. He wanted to get rid of the crazy inferiority complex and the greed for power in her bones. Instead, he wanted to keep this crazy desire in him. That was why Yu Xiaoyan set up this trap. He wanted to let her know that even if she chose power, without his existence, she would not have a good life. She would be in extreme pain and misery. There was no him in this world. She was nothing. She had nothing. If she wanted happiness, then she could only be by his side. Power, everything in the Bai family, anything she was greedy for. Nothing could compare to him, Yu Xiaoyan. What she wanted could only be obtained from him. The man stood in the shadows. His perfect side profile was sickly pale, and there was a sense of coldness and refinement. He slowly lowered his head, his thin lips holding the teacup, and drank the tea in mouthfuls. Like when he drank someone's blood, especially when he saw her in the corridor. Helplessness and sadness flashed in her clear and helpless eyes. The lips that touched the tea slowly curled up, forming a gloomy and happy smile. Just like that, the entire world is your enemy. When she was bullied to the point where she couldn't find anyone to love her, he would be like a savior. He slowly walked out and extended his hand to her. Yu Xiaoyan smiled. At that time, he was probably the only one in her heart. The phone suddenly rang. The crazy darkness on Yu Xiaoyan's face instantly disappeared. He slowly put down the teacup and walked gracefully to the table to answer the call. Then the confidence disappeared from his face. A trace of disbelief flashed through his eyes, as well as the fear of losing control of the situation. Wei Wei Bai got into a car accident. Yu Xiaoyan didn't even change his clothes as he ran out barefooted. The man who had been so confident just now opened the door with trembling fingers. He clearly had someone by her side who could protect her. How could he let her get hurt? Meanwhile, Wei Wei Bai, who was in the hospital, looked like she had nothing to live for. I'm disfigured. The system said, no, it's just a small cut. It's very shallow. Wei Wei Bai was disheartened. I'm disfigured. My flawless skin was cut open with an ugly scar. I feel like I've suffered an unimaginable blow in my life. My only thought is to go upstairs and fly. The system hugged its head. You can do plastic surgery? You'll recover after a little surgery. The Chapter 2710. Wei Wei Bai. Can you still be considered a beauty after plastic surgery? Natural is the way to go. System. Who is the host who wants him to use props to make her the #1 beauty every day? Wei Wei Bai held her face and was about to continue crying about destroying the system. The system was quickly rescued and said, the male lead is here. He is here. It was so excited that it was like winning the lottery. Wei Wei Bai's expression immediately changed. She closed her eyes, pulled the blanket, and went to sleep. The car accident was not tragic enough. She could not teach Yu Xiaoyan, this pretentious bastard, a lesson. When Yu Xiaoyan set the trap, she analyzed him from the beginning to the end. She analyzed him down to his hair. In addition, the system said that there were people around to protect her. There were also people secretly instigating and stirring up emotions to resist and hate her. She guessed step by step until the end. The only reason Wei Wei Bai could think of was that Yu Xiaoyan was torturing the eagle. She was that poor little eagle. And Yu Xiaoyan was the one who wanted to torture her to death. A man who could lurk in the Bai family for so many years like a schizophrenic man must be mentally abnormal. He probably felt that it was too boring to get power. When he saw her bump into him and started to like her, he treated her as a target to conquer. Wei Wei Bai was very familiar with this feeling. She did this every day. To put it bluntly, Yu Xiaoyan just wanted to conquer her and wanted her favorability to 100. That was why he was so pretentious. She wanted 100 because she wanted to go home. There was a healthy, positive, and righteous reason. Yu Xiaoyan wanted 100 favorability because he had lost his purpose in life. If he had control of the power, there was nothing to play with. He was so bored that he went crazy. So he could only play with her and treat her as another game similar to the Bai family's power struggle. He wanted to beat her to completion. So Wei Wei Bai knew that the driver was crazy. When there was a problem, she still chose to get in the car. Of course, she did not know that the driver could be so ruthless. She just got in the car. He stepped on the accelerator to the end and wanted to die with her. But it was exactly what she wanted. If she didn't do this, Yu Xiaoyan would think that everything was in his hands. Wei Wei Bai said, only I can win over others. No one else can. She was the only one who could be unreasonable, and no one else could. Since he wanted to toss and turn. Come on, let's torment each other, be affectionate to each other, and attack each other. The door opened, and Yu Xiaoyan stood quietly at the door. His uneven breathing and rapid heartbeat made him look a little embarrassed. He reached out to hold the door and walked in step by step. On the hospital bed, under the thin blanket, a slender and weak silhouette appeared. Yu Xiaoyan steadied his breathing and quietly walked to the bedside. However, he saw the girl lying on her side, her whole body curled up. The side of her face was covered with thick medical bandages, and a metal plate slid across her cheek. It was said that the position of the metal plate was a few centimeters off. Her face might have been smashed into pieces. At that time, she could treat it as if she was dead. Yu Xiaoyan's heart was pierced by a sharp pain. His fingers trembled as he pulled open some blankets. She was afraid to see other big wounds. The girl's eyelashes trembled, and her brows were tightly furrowed. She seemed to be in great pain. The trace of blood that he had painstakingly nurtured was replaced by a haggard and decadent dark gray color. Her beautiful red lips had also lost all their color. Only a kind of deathly darkness appeared. Yu Xiaoyan's breathing was extremely heavy. He had almost lost her. He was about to let go of the blanket and leave. Wei Wei Bai suddenly opened her eyes, and she looked into his eyes. Yu Xiaoyan was stunned, and his footsteps froze. However, her body suddenly twitched, and a painful expression appeared on her face. A mouthful of blood suddenly spat out from her lips. And read the full article at https:// www.sashu.com// and read it on your phone. https://m. Sashu. Com. Chapter 2711. This mouthful of blood came too suddenly, and blood overflowed from her grayish-white lips. She stared fixedly at him. That pair of round and beautiful eyes, at this moment, carried a kind of stubbornness that was terrifying to the point of madness as she stared fixedly at Yu Xiaoyan. Yu Xiaoyun's muscles suddenly stiffened, and his mind went blank. He felt that his body was floating. He was slow for a few seconds before he reacted. Something had happened to Wei Wei Bai. He instinctively wanted to turn around and call for help, but the girl on the bed pounced on him. The 4-needle on her wrist flew out with a few drops of blood. Yu Xiaoyan immediately reached out and hugged her tightly. The huge impact made him groan, but his body did not retreat. The person in his arms grabbed his clothes tightly with both hands, and her whole body trembled. She seemed to be unconscious, and the fragile pain on her face was undisguised. She begged in a low voice, "Yu Xiaoyan, don't go." Yu Xiaoyun's hand that was holding her stiffened for a while before gently landing on her back. Her thin back looked so helpless under his palm. His teeth trembled slightly, and he only felt a terrible headache. She was in a car accident. He received more impact than anyone else. He calculated everything and was unwilling to be at a disadvantage. He had to control everything in his hands. He would rather put her in danger than let her suffer. In the end, he realized that he was not a god. He had calculated everything, but she could have died because of some inconspicuous mistake. He did not even include that driver in his plan. However, when she was forced to betray her family, he was bribed by his opponent, who planned to murder her, causing the entire group to be in complete chaos. If it wasn't for his show that made too many people believe it, those people wouldn't have fallen out so quickly. They wouldn't have bribed the driver to kill her. He touched the ends of her hair with his fingers. Her black hair was unusually messy and had lost its silky luster. His fingertips touched the skin on her neck. There were scratch marks, and the fine wounds on her fair skin was almost transparent. It was a shocking sight. Yu Xiaoyan gritted his teeth and carried her up horizontally. Wei Wei Bai seemed to be frightened. She grabbed his clothes with both hands and buried her head in his chest. It was like a kitten that had lost its home and was clinging to its last hope. She was worried that she would be abandoned. Yu Xiaoyan couldn't bear to put her down. He could only walk to the table and ring the bell to call the nurses and doctors. Her fingers kept trembling, and the mouthful of blood from earlier was still on the bedding. It had already begun to dry up and become deeper. Yu Xiaoyan originally wanted her to let go of him. He was worried about her physical condition. However, he found that his fingertips were wet with cold sweat. Yu Xiaoyan stared blankly at the cold sweat on her fingers. Only then did she realize that her body was trembling uncontrollably. It was not because of excitement. Instead, it was some sort of uncontrollable excessive convulsion. Yu Xiaoyan touched her hair with his fingers and saw that her forehead was full of fine water droplets. He finally became anxious. "Wei Wei, let go of me. The doctor is here." Wei Wei Bai couldn't hear him at all. Her eyes were in a trance. He wasn't really awake. It seemed to be grabbing at him instinctively, but she didn't dare to raise her head. She seemed to be afraid of something. When the doctor and nurse rushed in, they saw a strange scene. Yu Xiaoyan, who was wearing messy home clothes, was standing by the bed with their patient in his arms. The two of them seemed to have a strange sense of tragedy. Yu Xiaoyan suddenly raised his eyes. The fragile look in his eyes disappeared in the blink of an eye and was replaced by a cold strength. The download address is at https://www.sashu.com. Chapter 2712. He shouted coldly, "What are you waiting for?" With this order, the doctor came over to see the patient. However, he found that this position was not easy to treat. Yu Xiaoyan also knew that Wei Wei Bai was holding on to him too tightly. Their skin was only covered by a thin layer of clothes. However, they could clearly feel each other's temperature, and he could feel that her skin was unusually cold. Yu Xiaoyan slowly took a deep breath. He felt that the air in his throat and windpipe was boiling hot. His temples were still in pain. Then he heard his calm voice instruct, "Tranquilizer." She seemed to be in a nightmare. Something was completely wrong. Wei Wei Bai, who was injected with a tranquilizer, finally felt weak in her hands and feet. When she was placed on the bed by Yu Xiaoyan, she seemed to have finally woken up for a moment. Her eyes were red. "Yu Xiaoyan, you're not dead." The bitterness and fragility in her tone were moving. Yu Xiaoyan froze for a moment. Then, he put her hand flat as if nothing had happened and pulled the blanket over to cover her. Then, he took out a clean handkerchief and gently wiped her lips. The nurse began to put an intravenous drip on her wrist again and treat her small wounds. The doctor also began to check the medical equipment, intending to re-examine Wei Wei Bai. The surroundings were unusually messy. Only this man's action of wiping her blood was meticulous and gentle. It was as if everyone was a frozen background, and only he was the quietest world. Yu Xiaoyan took a deep breath and finally suppressed his trembling body. He said in a low voice, "I'm not dead. Didn't the other party say that they would kill me in 3 days?" The sobriety in Bai Weiwei's eyes was unstable. Most of her face was covered with medical bandages, making her 2 bloodshot eyes look even bigger. They were so big that it was frightening and pitiful. Her lips trembled. "I thought I had given up on you." In other words, 3 days were up. She would not save him either. Yu Xiaoyan listened to her gradually softening voice, but he was still calm. "Well, let's give up." When he said this, his tone was as thin as a thread, as if he was finally telling the truth in a low voice. "Even I am about to give up on myself." Wei Wei Bai didn't seem to hear him. Even Yu Xiaoyan felt that he was speaking with his lips, almost silently. He would never say such depressing words. He didn't allow himself to say it either, even though he knew that he already had 1 foot on the cliff. The mental scars left behind since childhood had never been better. By this year, the situation had deteriorated to the point of collapse. It didn't collapse. It was just that she was holding on. But he saw her as his only salvation, so he wanted to control everything about her more and more. He didn't allow her to be distracted by him at all. He would not allow her to have other pursuits in her heart. It didn't matter when he was sentimental and fond of her. But when he really started to care about her, he shifted all his attention to her. His demands on her were starting to become heavier. It was so heavy that it was morbid. Yu Xiaoyan's expression was calm and gentle, and no other emotions could be seen. He finished wiping off the blood and watched her slowly close her eyes. Her long eyelashes drooped pitifully, casting a thick shadow. It made her even more haggard. Yu Xiaoyan felt that she clearly had a vicious and crazy side to her. But why did she look so easy to bully? Why did she make people feel that she couldn't do bad things? It wasn't accurate to say that one's appearance came from one's heart, regardless of whether it was on him, a person who looked like a Buddhist to others. /fast/, //fast, the download address is at https://www.sashu.com. Fast the is at https://m/sashu.com/fast. Chapter 27:13. And it was on a weak and helpless little girl like her. Wei Wei Bai suddenly opened her eyes with great effort and held his palm with weak fingers. The man's palm was actually covered in sultry sweat. It seemed to have been squeezed out by him tightly. Her voice was hoarse. "I want you." Yu Xiaoyan looked at her without saying a word, as if he couldn't react in time. Wei Wei Bai felt a lump in her throat. Her voice trembled, and she almost begged him to say something domineering. "I want you, Yu Xiaoyan. I want you to live. I want you to love me. You're not allowed to leave me." These words were too humble. She said it was all in one throw, in such a weak voice, in such a tragic tone. It was like the words of a person who was in extreme despair and had lost everything, using the last bit of her voice to say she wanted him, an extremely willful request. But she said it while crying. Yu Xiaoyan allowed her to hold his hand. Slowly, her hand lost its strength. Her eyelashes finally fell, and the sound of her breathing could be heard faintly. In Yu Xiaoyan's palm, her fingertips began to slide. Finally, He moved his fingers and gently closed them, gathering her fingers in his palm. Then he stood up silently, lowered his head, and stretched out his other hand. Under the disapproving eyes of the doctor and nurse, but they didn't dare to protest, he removed the bandage on her face. The wound was very scary. It had just been applied with medicine, so it was green and red. One could even see the white flesh under the skin. He thought of the car accident, where she had been on the brink of death. There was also the iron plate that had slid across her cheek, and she had almost been killed. Compared to life, this wound was actually not serious. But to her, it was indeed a fatal wound. Yu Xiaoyun slowly suppressed the discomfort in his chest and asked in a low voice, "Can it not leave a scar?" The doctor hesitated and replied, "You have to use cosmetic surgery." In other words, the usual treatment method couldn't heal her wound. She could only use plastic surgery. The current plastic surgery technology was extremely advanced, and the skin graft repair could still be achieved without scars. Yu Xiaoyun said, "Then use it." She didn't like this wound. No woman would like it. Yu Xiaoyun looked at her wound and was stunned for a long time before he asked the doctor to change the dressing. He sat there quietly. He allowed the doctor to examine him, change his dressing, and change the drip bottle again. The data on the instrument slowly returned to normal. In the end, the doctor said she was seriously injured in the car accident last time. Now that she's in another car accident, it's going to take a lot of effort for her body to recover. These words were actually very harsh. Once the foundation of one's body was not good, one would have to take good care of the weak and sickly. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lived a long life. Yu Xiaoyun acted as if he didn't hear it. He just calmly asked, "Why did you vomit blood?" The doctor said, "The internal organs are fragile, and the stress is attacking the heart. It's caused by a huge fluctuation of emotions. The patient can't be too emotional before he recovers." "Yu Xiaoyun, did you find any other problems?" The doctor shook his head. "No, the rest are the sequelae of the car accident. The patient is out of danger now. The rest is just hard work." What he meant was whether the patient could recover or not. Would it become a medicine jar in the future? It all depended on how much the patient's family valued her during this period of time and whether they could serve her well. Otherwise, the slightest bit of carelessness would leave behind a permanent illness, which would be troublesome in the future. Yu Xiaoyun nodded, indicating that he understood. The doctor and the nurse tidied up and left. The bodyguards and a department manager who followed at the door stood trembling with fear. The comma. Chapter 27:14. Yu Xiaoyun sat motionless, his fingers intertwined with her hand. His sitting posture, even his back, was a little bent, giving him a decadent feeling. "I'll come back to collect the punishment later. First, detain everyone related to the driver and wait for me to deal with them." After saying that, he paused and said, "Close the door." The bodyguards immediately closed the door and left a few to guard. The rest went to do things. The ward was very quiet. Only the sound of the equipment and the girl's steady breathing could be heard. There was also the sound of his rapid heartbeat. Yu Xiaoyun finally exhaled slowly. His face was unusually pale, and his eyes were trembling. Everything was arranged. He was like a patient who had survived a disaster and finally dared to show his weakness. "It's good that you're fine," he said in a low voice with a trace of helplessness and sadness. "I really don't have a way out." Yu Xiaoyun thought of his nightmare. It wasn't a nightmare. It was reality. When he killed his only friend in the Bai family and slowly put himself in the position of the dangerous, elegant, and seemingly beautiful young master of a big family. That weak version of himself had died in his own hands. But his nature didn't let him go. He always remembered his original home. Although his father was the #1 lackey of the Bai family, he loved his family very much. To give him a normal childhood, he hid all of his darkness so that he could follow his mother and live as carefree as an ordinary child. And that normal childhood became a mountain that crushed his spirit. If he had been dark from the beginning, he wouldn't have felt guilty or blamed himself. He wouldn't have hated his darkness and madness. But his childhood was too beautiful and bright. This light illuminated him, who had used all kinds of despicable means to survive, to an abnormally hateful appearance. instead of saying that he destroyed everything in the Bai family. He was taking revenge. It was better to say that he was destroying those who had witnessed him, like a stray dog, using all kinds of means to survive. Yu Xiaoyan slowly revealed a pale smile. I hate myself. This was his illness. It went deep into his bone marrow and was beyond cure. After meeting you, I saw the light of redemption. He slowly lowered his head and buried himself in her slightly cold neck. Just like a child, he muttered in a low voice, feeling extremely wronged. I also want everything of yours, because a person like me is not worthy of anyone's love. If I want someone to love me, I can only use tricks. I can only snatch. Yu Xiaoyan's breath was close to her scarred skin. He felt the pulse in her neck that was still alive. That fragile heartbeat made her tremble. It seemed to be his only living consciousness. His fingers trembled as he clutched the sleeve of her arm. It was as crazy as when she grabbed his clothes. But he couldn't bear to touch her arm for fear of hurting her. Thank you. His breathing paused, and his tears fell into the depths of her shoulder, wetting her long hair. Choose me. He had planned and schemed, but all he wanted was one person. She just wanted him, even if he was not elegant, not beautiful, and extremely ugly. She still wanted him. Yu Xiaoyan quietly shed tears. When she was asleep, he revealed all of his weakness and inferiority. The lonely man didn't even dare to show such a pathetic side when she was awake. He was worried that all she wanted was the high and mighty him, instead of being so incompetent and weak at this very moment. Even so, when he heard her say that he was the one she wanted, his heart still throbbed fiercely. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 89. / to facilitate your next reading, you can click on the Chapter 27:15. Wei Wei Bai was in a daze. Yu Xiaoyan was afraid that she would wake up, so he injected a little too much tranquilizer. Her limbs were weak, as if she was floating in the clouds. She opened her eyes with great effort and instinctively reached out to rub her temples because her head hurt a little. But before her fingers could fall, they were grasped by another warm hand. It was a little hard, but she didn't feel any pain. Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes trembled before she slowly opened her eyes. Wei Wei Bai, whose vision was a little out of focus, turned her face to the side and only saw a blurry figure beside the bed. She blinked hard and finally saw it clearly. It was Yu Xiaoyan. The man had already changed his clothes. The neat black suit made his figure even more slender and exquisite. His handsome and elegant face was calm and gentle under the white light. He put her fingers under the blanket as if he didn't care. He didn't let her fingers touch her face. It's cold. Don't catch a cold. After saying that, he fed her water. The man casually glanced at the bandage on her face for half a second. Then, as if nothing had happened, he supported her back and slowly fed the girl the warm water in his arms. Her figure was too thin. She was already as slender as a child, but now her health was taken away by the accident. It took her so much effort to cultivate and take away her delicate appearance. It made her more like a lifeless paper person, with a frightening sense of fragility. Yu Xiaoyan lowered his eyes. There were countless emotions in his eyes, but he didn't reveal any of them. Instead, he was like before, still with a little strength and elegance, controlling everything about her. Wei Wei Bai was a little confused. She looked at him blankly. She even drank the water obediently. But her eyes didn't move as she looked at him. Yu Xiaoyan knew what she was thinking, but he didn't say anything. After drinking the water, Yu Xiaoyan didn't let go of her. Instead, he sat on the bed and let her nestle in his arms obediently. His fingers were incomparably gentle as they caressed her somewhat dry long hair. His fingertips were filled with an incomparably tender strength. Wei Wei Bai froze and didn't move. Yu Xiaoyan. She finally opened her mouth. Her voice was still hoarse due to her injuries and excessive sleep. In the depths of his throat, one could even hear a few weak, trembling sounds. Are you all right? She saw him being taken away with her own eyes. But when she was in a car accident, she saw him appear. Wei Wei Bai seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes were filled with bewilderment and doubt. She was never stupid. However, he was more like an ostrich when it came to this matter. He asked cautiously, Yu Xiaoyan silently put down the glass of water, then reached out and gently pressed her temples. The gentle force was unusually comfortable. Wei Wei Bai's frown finally eased a little. An indescribable silence spread between the two of them. For a moment, neither of them dared to break the silence. Finally, Yu Xiaoyan said, "It's fake. I thought you liked me, so I set up a fake scheme to get you to reopen the sea navigation project. As long as the project is reopened, my people need to appear." He was the one who initiated the project, although he could solve many things by himself. But more of the project branches were headed by Chun Shan, and the junior leaders under him were in charge of handling them. Wei Wei Bai listened quietly. She wasn't hysterical or angry. She was like a pitiful child, curled up in his arms and listened blankly. At this point, Yu Xiaoyan paused and then chuckled softly. "Unfortunately, you prefer my money or the career that I've built." Chapter 27:16. His tone was indifferent. It was so relaxed that it was as if he was talking about what to eat for lunch. He even had the leisure to gently kiss her forehead. If you like someone, you would yearn to hug her, kiss her, and love her. This was human nature's instinctive closeness to anything that one loved to the bone. Yu Xiaoyan had always resisted this kind of instinctive control, but he couldn't resist her and was willing to do it. Wei Wei Bai let him kiss her in a daze. A trace of trembling, fragility, and complicated pain appeared in her eyes. She pursed her lips. "Don't think that I will. I will give you the person. Give you." Yu Xiaoyan could almost taste the bitterness in her words, as well as that uncontrollable sense of fragility. She was already so weak. She still had to use such a fragile shell to support her self-esteem. Yu Xiaoyan sighed, let go of her, and put her on the bed. Wei Wei Bai's panicked face was revealed. He got up and was about to leave. The girl behind him was like a cat. She suddenly pounced on him and grabbed his waist tightly with both hands. She said in horror, "Where are you going? Don't you want me anymore? Is it because I didn't pass your test? Do you hate me?" These words were too humble and panicky. Yu Xiaoyan, who was about to pick up the thermos and feed Wei Wei Bai, froze. She was pressed against his back. Because they were too close, he could feel her body trembling nonstop. She was really afraid. He was going to leave. Yu Xiaoyan felt as if something was stuck in his throat, and he felt extremely uncomfortable. His manipulation, planning, and all kinds of coldly watching cruelty. He had forced her to the edge of a cliff. With just a gentle push, he could drive her crazy. Yu Xiaoyan felt that he was extremely ridiculous. Why didn't he see how weak and helpless the softness in the depths of her heart was? He felt that he was testing her and forcing her. It was like a cold killer. This was not love. His sick desire and possessiveness were not love for her. Instead, he was forcing her to fall into hell with him. It was more like a kind of crazy hatred. Hating her had made him like her and turned him into a lunatic who was worried about his gains and losses. He could only chase after her everything. Yu Xiaoyan's breathing paused for a long time before he finally suppressed his sour expression. He was just about to comfort her. However, he heard her whisper, "Yu Xiaoyan, I love you." Yu Xiaoyan was silent and stood there in a daze. She repeated softly, "I've loved you for a long, long time." Everything seemed like an unbelievable dream. Yu Xiaoyan didn't even know what he was feeling because his heart was surging with emotions. She was the only one who loved him. This thought continued to eat away at his everything. Her voice reverberated in his body. She liked him, he knew, but he had never thought that he would hear her say that she loved him with his own ears. She begged, "I'll return them to you. I didn't hurt your subordinates. I was afraid that you would be angry. I took good care of them. Please don't be angry with me." Yu Xiaoyan's nose was a little sour. He blinked, and his eyes began to turn red. Then he said in a low voice, "No, I'm not angry." He would never be able to be angry with her. He was angry at himself for being too harsh and cruel to her. He was sick, so he was like a madman and treated her badly. Wei Wei Bai hugged his waist and pressed the side of her face against his back muscles. A happy smile appeared on her pale face. "It's good that you're not angry. Then I'll return your business and company to you. I didn't want them in the first place. If you want to start the sea navigation project, then start it. I don't care. She said it casually. Slash. Chapter 27:17. She had really given up everything. She might have forgotten what she muttered to herself in a daze before she was injected with the tranquilizer. She wanted him. Yu Xiaoyan thought that those were the most beautiful words. But he didn't expect that she didn't say it, because she was confused. She really chose to want him so seriously. And she gave up everything that she had painstakingly schemed and endured for so many years to get in exchange for him. Yu Xiaoyan saw the dark shadow in front of him, the other self that emerged from the twisted and divided spirit in his heart, slowly fading away. A heart of self-loathing. It was actually filled by her. If he didn't love himself, gave up on himself, and hated himself, the only way to heal was the love of another person for him. Yu Xiaoyun's fingers loosened with some difficulty, and blood appeared in his palm under his fingernails. His fingertips pierced his skin too hard. He didn't feel pain, only joy. Yu Xiaoyan lowered his head and let her hug him. His short black hair scattered down and covered his red eyes. The dark night, the cold light. His thin lips finally couldn't help but curve up. Then he reached out and gently pulled away her 10 fingers that were crossed in front of his waist, almost piously. He turned around and squatted down gently, almost kneeling on the ground with one knee. Then he raised his chin, revealing his white, jade-like face and his pair of deeply affectionate eyes. Wei Wei Bai sat on the blanket in a daze. Her expression was very ugly, and her fingers were still trembling. Yu Xiaoyan held her hands and pressed them to his lips. Wei Wei, his voice was even indifferent. Thank you. But it was so gentle that it moved people. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 93. Yu Xiaoyan held her fingers tightly, and his eyes curved. I'll love you too. Her choppy words were a little stuttering. The man seemed a little embarrassed. He raised his head and pulled her hard. Wei Wei Bai didn't have the strength to resist and fell into his prepared embrace. A gentle embrace, a strong heartbeat. Yu Xiaoyan lowered his head and kissed her deeply. Wei Wei Bai seemed to be scared. She could only curl up and not dare to move as he hugged her. A long time later, she heard him say faintly, "Close your eyes if you're tired." Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes fluttered. The man continued in a hoarse voice, "May I continue?" She moved her lips and said, "I can't." I know." She sounded a little disappointed. But the next sentence was, "What I said was continue kissing you." Wei Wei Bai's lips moved slightly, and she was about to say something, but it was too late. The man stroked her hair and hugged her tighter. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 95. Chen Shan felt like he was recuperating with a bunch of rough men. It was especially tiring. Although everyone was playing cards in the hospital, it was noisy, and no one cared about eating hot pot. But he always felt that it was strange to live like a muddle-headed life. He seemed to have forgotten something. Occasionally, when they were recuperating from their injuries, they would suddenly pull out a white cloth and start meeting. But after the meeting, he would wonder what he was doing. They seemed to have lost some of their memories due to the aftermath of the car accident. When the doctor said that she could leave the hospital, they collectively stood at the door in a row in hospital gowns. A cold wind blew. The hospital was still the same hospital, but this person was no longer the same person. The doctor was wrong, the nurse was wrong, and even the stray cats at the door was wrong. Because there was no trash can at the entrance of their hospital, and there would be no stray cats and dogs. Slash. Chapter 27:18. It was especially clean. It was so clean that it was not normal. Everyone was suddenly jolted awake. They suddenly realized who they were, what they were doing, and the sequelae were all gone. Then, under Chun Shan's lead, everyone fled as if they had seen a ghost. When they finally ran back to the Bai family's mansion. At the entrance of the Bai family's mansion, which had already changed its surname, the house number was still Bai. Chun Shan and his brothers entered the house, trembling with fear. They almost ran away. It was fine if there were no guards, but the mansion was empty, almost like a haunted house. It was not easy for them to run to the love garden, intending to look for their boss. In the end, there was a pool of dead lotuses, as well as all kinds of flowers, plants, and trees that grew horizontally. The love garden had become an extremely barren, lush, and wild paradise that almost drowned Yu Xiaoyan's house. Chen Shan had just squeezed across the small bridge with a group of brothers in hospital clothes. They saw a more normal scene. Yu Xiaoyan was standing at the door, and Wei Wei Bai was sitting in his arms, leaning against him. The pitiful girl seemed to have become even thinner and weaker. She cowered a little and reached out to cover her face. "It's ugly." She tried very hard to hide. However, Yu Xiaoyan was very calm and gentle. He used a stubborn action to trap her and stared at her bandaged face. His eyes were unusually calm. "The scar is very easy to remove. Don't touch it with your hands, and don't touch it with water. It will heal." Then, Yu Xiaoyan continued his actions. He used a sandalwood comb to continue combing her messy long hair. Because of the lack of nutrition, she had lost too much blood after the car accident. There were piles of pills to be taken, so it was inevitable that there would be some sequelae. For example, her beautiful long hair began to lose its luster and even began to knot. Wei Wei Bai even wanted to cut her with scissors. However, Yu Xiaoyan stopped her and personally took care of her long hair. He used warm water to wash her hair with Chinese medicine, then dried it with the lightest wind. Then, he carried her to the door to bask in the sun. He used a sandalwood comb to slowly comb her hair. There was also essential oil for hair care beside it. After combing her hair, he would use these to massage her hair. When the man was serious, he was frighteningly gentle and meticulous. When they were in the hospital, Yu Xiaoyan didn't let her talk about work. He didn't plan to talk about taking back those properties either. Instead, he focused on letting her recuperate. This car accident was related to the previous one, which caused his body to be weak. However, it was not as serious as the previous car accident. The most serious wound was the one on his face. Therefore, after recuperating for nearly 2 weeks, Yu Xiaoyan agreed to take her out of the hospital. Nothing went well in the hospital. Once he was sure that she needed to recuperate, he would bring her home to personally watch over her and take care of her. Yu Xiaoyan's movements were serious and focused. He didn't even look at his subordinate who was standing behind a pile of weeds. He was not surprised at all by their sudden appearance. Wei Wei Bai leaned against him and said sadly, "If I become ugly, you won't want me anymore." Yu Xiaoyan's fingers paused for a moment before returning to normal and continuing to comb her hair. Wei Wei Bai said in self-loathing, "You haven't seen my wound," Yu Xiaoyan said indifferently. "Yes, I was the one who changed the dressing when you were asleep." Wei Wei Bai was stunned. The man had already lowered his head and kissed her bandage. "All right, don't think too much. It's just a scar. How can I not want you?" After he said that, he smiled. Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips. She didn't believe him, but she didn't continue to argue. It was as if this question had been asked many times. Yu Xiaoyan's technique was too comfortable. Bai Weiwei leaned against him and leaned against him before falling asleep. He continued to massage her hair unhurriedly. When the wind started to blow, Yu Xiaoyan carried her back to the house. Chun Shan and the rest of the big brothers squatted in the grass. They were about to turn into grass. Finally, Yu Xiaoyan came out of the door. His elegant figure quietly came to the grass. "She let you guys come back." Chun Shan and the rest of the people had strange doubts. After all, they had just run out of a strange hospital. When they came back, they saw such a strange scene. Everyone found it strange. Yu Xiaoyan reached out and rolled up his sleeves unhurriedly. "You came back just in time. Are your wounds all healed?" Chen Shan was immediately moved and nodded immediately. "They're all healed. Everyone is fine." The boss's concern warmed his heart. Yu Xiaoyan nodded. "That's good. Then let's start cleaning up the courtyard. You guys go and take out all the lotus in the pond first." After he finished speaking, he paused and thought of something. "All right, remember to take out the lotus roots carefully. Tonight, I'm going to make lotus root and pork rib soup for Wei Wei to replenish her blood and qi." Chun Shan and the rest of the brothers / crossover system. Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www. Sashu. Download Transmigration system. Adonis, come here and read this on your phone. https://m. Sashu. The comma. Chapter 2719. After Shan and the others returned, the big house finally had some life. Otherwise, there would be only Yu Xiaoyun, who was about to become a deity, left in this place. There was also Wei Bai, who was as obedient as a kitten. The two of them couldn't make any noise. They were both gentle and weak. Shan and the others felt that it was very quiet. Yu Xiaoyun also wanted to make this place livelier, but Wei Bai didn't say anything. He didn't want to call those servants back. He was afraid that her fragile mind would think too much and see those servants. He would think of the scene where the two of them turned against each other. It was good that Shan came back. Although he was rough, he still had thoughts. So Yu Xiaoyun let them eat hot pot. Wei Bai was still on a diet and couldn't eat. She could only eat the light food that Yu Xiaoyun made for her. The food was unexpectedly delicious for a person who found learning to be easy. Yu Xiaoyun put in a lot of effort to learn cooking, so it was very easy to capture Wei Bai's stomach. We saw the girl use a white porcelain spoon to scoop up the soup he made and drink it sip by sip. It was rare to experience a sense of accomplishment that was different from the success of his career. It was another kind of peaceful and beautiful satisfaction. On the large round table, Shan and a dozen or so senior team leaders who had just recovered were scooping meatballs and eating lamb strips. The fragrance curled up in the smoke. Wei Bai looked enviously at Shan, the meat in his hand. Then she continued to eat her own plain soup. There was no other way. Her body was almost ruined by the car accident. She was worried that she would die before she completed the task because she was too weak. She could only eat the food that Yu Xiaoyun made. Yu Xiaoyun sat opposite her and was picking food for her. They had their own table, a small square table. It was placed not far from the round table. Behind them was the lotus pond that could be seen through the open window. The fallen lotus flowers in the pond had been cleaned up. The moonlight reflected on it was exceptionally beautiful. Wei Bai suddenly shook the spoon in her hand. She frowned and pursed her lips, not saying anything. Yu Xiaoyun held her hand and took her spoon. "Is your arm numb again?" he asked in detail. Wei Bai's voice was extremely calm. "I'm fine." However, Yu Xiaoyun pinched her wrist with his fingers and rubbed it bit by bit. He loosened her stiff arms. He lowered his head and massaged her seriously. She was already very familiar with this action. After all, during this period of time, when her blood was blocked, she would always feel numb in her shoulders. He could even pinch the right amount of force to make her feel comfortable. Wei Bai looked at him silently. Her lips moved, but in the end, she lowered her eyes and didn't say anything. Yu Xiaoyun seemed to be completely unaware of how much tenderness and humility his actions carried. After the meal, only then did Yu Xiaoyun tell Shan about the transfer of assets. Shan, then he suddenly asked, "What's going on? Are you being coerced? Or did someone blackmail you?" Yu Xiaoyun thought for a moment, then turned around to look for Wei Bai. He saw her walking slowly and seriously while supporting herself against the wall not far away. The doctor told her to do some light movements. Therefore, after she was full, she would hold onto the wall like a child learning to walk. Step by step, she would seriously count her steps as she walked around the wall. It was cold outside, and he couldn't bear to let her go out for a walk. Because of the importance he attached to her body, Yu Xiaoyun sometimes felt that he was restraining her too much. Yu Xiaoyun's voice was faint, and there was only the shadow of that girl in his gentle eyes. "Yes, it's something that can be used against you." Shan asked anxiously, and his tone was unfriendly. "What do you mean, comma?" Chapter 2720. The transfer of business was not a small matter. He felt that the sky had fallen when the company changed. After all, they had followed Yu Xiaoyun to build the business and had already recognized Yu Xiaoyun. Wasn't it a joke to change someone else? Yu Xiaoyun turned his face and said casually, "My heart." Shan? Question mark. Yu Xiaoyun couldn't help but laugh. "I think it's worth it to use everything I have to exchange for her happiness." Shan. He had once thought that his boss was going to become an immortal. He wished that he could find a wife to control him as soon as possible. Only now did he know that his boss had indeed become an immortal. A love immortal. Either he didn't look for one, or he had to be 30 years old with a pure look on his face. In the end, when he finally found one, he found such a young one. However, men were all like this. Who didn't want to find a young, old man who abandoned his chaff to marry a young girl? Of course, he despised this kind of thing very much. Chen Shan was still happy that although Yu Xiaoyan found a young one, he still found one after all. He should be more human. In the end, he wasn't human. It was a business that he had fought so hard to build. It was a company that he had worked so hard to transform. Just like that, this old lover of the Bai family gave it to his little girl. Had Yu Xiaoyan never seen the world and never been in a relationship? Who would give away 90% of their net worth just because they were in a relationship? The remaining 10% was probably in danger because he saw the supplements that Yu Xiaoyan bought for Wei Bai. It was simply too expensive. Chen Shan felt that Yu Xiaoyan couldn't possibly ask Wei Bai for money. Therefore, he used the remaining money from his business to raise such a precious little cutie. This was too expensive. He hadn't even married her yet, and he was already bankrupt. Chen Shan was stunned and speechless for a moment. His mind was blank. He felt that he might as well have died in a car accident on the spot. He wouldn't have seen Yu Xiaoyan like Emperor Ming of the Tang dynasty, who wanted a beauty and gave up his business. Chen Shan rubbed his face with his hand in despair and cried, "So, are you telling me that we're going to lose our jobs?" They only recognized Yu Xiaoyan. Wei Bai and the rest did not acknowledge her. Yu Xiaoyan was already poor. How could they have a nerve to follow the new owner to eat and drink well? This was too unbrotherly. Yu Xiaoyan's attitude was sloppy, and his eyes kept following Wei Bai. He treated Chen Shan indifferently. No, she's not used to the company's operations. She's not in good health and loves to work. Moreover, having too much self-esteem leads to extreme inferiority and sensitivity. In the future, you have to make the documents simple and easy to understand. Try to reduce the number of meetings and time as much as possible. Chen Shan, also, when you're done, leave her with the easiest way to clean up the mess. Let her feel that she's the one who did it well. That way, she'll feel happier. Chen Shan looked at Yu Xiaoyan, ignoring Yu Xiaoyan's calm expression as he continued to give orders. She can do whatever she wants. If the company collapses, you can come to me. I'll clean up the mess for her. Chen Shan went from despair to numbness. In the end, he was expressionless. If you say so, you could do whatever you want. This was the first time he had seen his authority taken away. He could even be in charge of after-sales and be so happy. Chen Shan felt blood churning in his chest. He wanted to spit it out, but he couldn't. He only felt that his life was filled with the taste of despair. His boss was completely done for because of girl. And he didn't just send himself to his doorstep. Chapter 27-21. Even their group of brothers were sent to be coolies. Yu Xiaoyan finally concluded calmly. You guys have to work harder. You have to rush to do all the hardest and most difficult things. You have to make her feel that starting a company is just like playing. She earned the money because she was smart, and you guys are useless if you lose money. I'm just a retired old man. When you want to complain to me, you can send me an email. At this point, he reminded them worriedly, don't let her know the cruelty of society. I have to protect her. Chen Shan, you have to protect her. Who will protect their group of brothers? They had never seen their boss in a relationship like this. They had no fucking dignity, did they? Yu Xiaoyan suddenly looked up faintly. That pair of incomparably gentle eyes turned cold and calm. Do you understand? Chen Shan immediately clenched his fists and said seriously, I understand. I will do this difficult task well. Yu Xiaoyan, lower your voice. Chen Shan immediately pursed his lips and said softly, yes, boss. Yu Xiaoyan, she will be your boss in the future. Chen Shan looked at the young girl who was slowly walking forward with small steps. The tail of the girl's long hair was also swaying. She looked so cute. If he punched her, she would probably cry like a flower. In the end, Chen Shan helplessly covered his face. Yes, Boss Wei. Yu Xiaoyan nodded. This kid was worth teaching. Then he got up and walked a few steps forward to the girl who was walking seriously. He picked her up easily. Time's up. You're not allowed to leave. If you continue to walk, you'll hurt yourself. Wei Bai frowned. I think I'm okay. Yu Xiaoyan, I don't think so. Wei Bai wanted to protest. Yu Xiaoyan suddenly looked dejected. Is it because I have nothing now that you don't even want to hear my concern? Wei Wei Bai. Yu Xiaoyan turned back again. His gentle gaze now looked at Chen Shan and the others with indescribable coldness. Chen Shan and the others immediately stood up. Then we'll take our leave. You guys have a good rest. Yu Xiaoyan looked at Chen Shan calmly. It seemed to be reminding him of something. Chen Shan looked at Wei Wei Bai, who was in his arms. The young girl's delicate and innocent appearance and her pair of pure eyes made her look pitiful and unthreatening. Was this their new boss? Chen Shan moved his mouth, but he felt as if his mouth was glued shut by superglue. It was extremely painful to open his mouth. In the end, he stared at Yu Xiaoyun's murderous eyes, lowered his head, and shouted, "Boss, sister-in-law, we'll be leaving first. Goodbye." Everyone shouted, "Boss, sister-in-law, have a good rest." Yu Xiaoyun was a little stunned. When he came back to his senses, he did not say anything. Everyone rolled back one by one. The room returned to its tranquil and warm atmosphere. Wei Wei Bai tugged at his clothes. Her face was a little red as she mumbled, "Whose sister-in-law?" A gentle smile appeared on Yu Xiaoyun's stunned face. Whatever. Wei Wei Bai didn't know how to react. He seemed to have noticed her confusion. Yu Xiaoyun carried her into the room and whispered to her softly, "It's fine if you want to be the boss. I'll be the sister-in-law." The corner of Wei Wei Bai's eyes twitched. She had seen many thick-skinned people, but they were so thick-skinned that they looked so elegant and calm. No. During this period of time, Wei Wei Bai's understanding of the realm of thick-skinned people had been refreshed again. She felt that she could learn from Yu Xiaoyan in the future. There was no end to acting, and she had to constantly learn and deepen her lifelong career. Chapter 27-22. Therefore, Wei Wei Bai also smiled calmly. "Yes, sister-in-law." Yu Xiaoyan thought for a moment and put her on the bed. Then he corrected her. "That's not how you address our relationship." Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips and didn't say anything. She also fell for his trick. After all, he would definitely call her husband next. Yu Xiaoyan would definitely be able to call her by such a mushy name. He could even call her his wife. Yu Xiaoyan didn't continue to be disgusted. He turned around and came in with a foot bath. It was filled with warm Chinese medicine. He held Wei Wei Bai's feet and carefully massaged her feet, so that the blood in her feet would flow smoothly and the coldness in her hands and feet would be relieved a little. Wei Wei Bai stared at his head. His soft and messy hair was stuck to his fair forehead. The man's appearance was still young and beautiful. However, there was an incomparably silent elegance. This was a temperament that a teenage boy couldn't have. He had always lived a noble life and lived a meticulous life. But he didn't expect that he would roll up his sleeves, cook, and wash someone's feet. Yu Xiaoyan didn't feel that he had sacrificed anything. But he knew Wei Wei Bai's psychological burden. Her toes were still trembling, and she wanted to escape. When he hugged her, she always turned her face to the side to avoid him. She didn't want him to see the injured side of her face. Yu Xiaoyan knew that this was a psychological problem unless she recovered. Otherwise, she would still be concerned about her appearance. No one would be so indifferent to their disfigurement. But her physical condition didn't allow her to undergo surgery. She might have to endure for another year or two to make sure that her physical condition could recover before she could operate on her again. Otherwise, Yu Xiaoyan couldn't bear for her to take any risks. After washing her feet, Wei Wei Bai curled up in the warm blanket. She turned her body to face him. Yu Xiaoyan turned off the lights. After she was injured, she had been sleeping with the lights off. There was no mirror at home, so she didn't want to face herself. Yu Xiaoyan let her be, but no matter what she wanted to do or how she broke down, she really wanted to be alone. He didn't leave, didn't fight back when she hit him, and didn't talk back when she scolded him. She couldn't bear to hit him anyway. Yu Xiaoyan would not give her personal space to think too clearly. She felt insecure and inferior. Wasn't he the same? He was afraid that she would wake up and not want him anymore. Yu Xiaoyan could only use everything he had to fill her time and space. This was the only thing he wanted to do. Put aside the company, career, and power. If she liked it, he would plan to give it to her. If she didn't like him one day, he wouldn't care. Wei Wei Bai curled up and covered herself with a quilt. In the dark, The man behind her had already hugged her tightly. She shook her body and reached out to cover the bandage on the side of her face. Her voice was somewhat choked as she said, "I'm very ugly." Even after so long, he still couldn't let go. Yu Xiaoyan was silent for a moment and gently held her hand so that she couldn't touch the bandage. "Don't worry, it'll get better," Wei Wei Bai said. "You don't have to be so good to me. It's true that I betrayed you and wanted you dead." Yu Xiaoyan was silent for a while before sighing softly. "Yes, I know." After saying this, the corners of his mouth had already curled up. "So be good to me in the future. Otherwise, you'll let me down even more." Wei Wei Bai seemed to be choked by his words, and her mind was stuck for a moment. Finally, she said, "What if I betray you one day in the future?" Yu Xiaoyan asked casually, "What kind of betrayal?" Wei Wei Bai probed. "For example, taking off your clothes, whipping you, or something like that." Yu Xiaoyan fell silent. Wei Wei Bai thought that there was no hope. However, she felt that the man behind her had already carefully gotten up and turned on the light. She didn't know where he got the small whip that she hid under the bed. Under the light, a lazy and strange smile appeared on the man's calm and elegant face. There was actually a beautiful and charming feeling. "What do you mean by whipping? How do you do it? Do you need me to take off my clothes?" Wei Wei Bai, her target was too proactive, and she was a little unable to control herself. /save button. Chapter 27-23. Under the dim bedside lamp, the man leaned against the bed. There were beautiful wooden buttons on his black silk pajamas. His slender fingertips had a strange sense of beauty under the dim light. Those beautiful fingertips had already reached the buttons and were unbuttoning them one by one. The skin under the man's beautiful white neck was exposed little by little. His skin color was as smooth as jade, and his chest below his collarbone was as beautiful as a work of art. Wei Wei Bai took the small whip that Yu Xiaoyan had given her and sat under the blanket. There was a trace of surprise in her eyes. Her eyes trembled slightly and swept across his neck. She found that the man's Adam's apple was moving. A blush swept across her face and reached her ears. Her eyes were red and delicate, and her fingers were holding the prop whip. It was more like a kind of pitiful temptation. Yu Xiaoyan's breath stopped for a long time. When he finally recovered his breath, he sat up. "I won't scare you anymore," he whispered, but his voice was unusually hoarse and sexy. It was obviously polite and elegant words, but for some reason, there was a trace of insincerity in them. Wei Wei Bai's eyes relaxed, and she was about to put down the whip. Yu Xiaoyan had already leaned forward, and his clothes were all scattered, revealing his strong upper body. Even the lines of his abdominal muscles could be seen. Her hand trembled, and the tail of the whip swept across his body. A faint red mark appeared on his body. Yu Xiaoyan's skin was fairer than ordinary people. Even if it was so faint that it was almost invisible, it was unusually clear on his skin. Wei Wei Bai's voice trembled. I didn't do it on purpose." After saying that, she was about to throw the whip away. Yu Xiaoyan smiled, stretched out his long arm, and held her wrist. The man's strong breath and the fragrance of his bath were like a kind of demonic poison, eroding this quiet space with an irresistible posture. His pair of affectionate eyes were burning with desire at this moment, and his breathing was unusually heavy. Wei Wei Bai stared at him blankly. The man smiled and slowly lowered his head. His thin lips were flirtatious and gently attached to the whip. His pair of gentle and beautiful eyes gently lifted. "It's okay. I like your intention." The man's words were like a demon in the dark night, full of evil and irresistible bewitchment. "So, you can be more intentional." Just as he finished speaking, he saw the young girl in his arms, and he was stunned. She wanted to pull back the whip, but she also wanted to dodge. She turned her body and tried to get off the bed. He was like a shy deer that was about to escape and had a bad feeling in advance. Yu Xiaoyan sighed faintly. He felt that he was simply too crazy. He really couldn't control himself when it came to her. She was still young. Yu Xiaoyan was still trying to convince himself. But as soon as the girl got off the bed, the man instinctively grabbed her whip and pulled her back with the whip. Yu Xiaoyan hugged her and whispered, "It's okay. Sleep well. I won't hurt you." Wei Wei Bai paused. and thought that it was true. Yu Xiaoyan said, "Of course, you can whip me again." Wei Wei bai. So she tried and whipped him. After all, the mission still had to be completed. Then, she confirmed one thing again. If a man's words could be trusted, Tong Zi could fix the reject button for the side mission. This night was too long. In the end, Wei Wei bai only wanted to use the whip to tire this man who had never seen a woman in 8 lifetimes. Chapter 27-24. The system, the side quest, there was nothing wrong with them showing their faces. It meant that they were locked in the little black room again. It was just a whip. Why do they have to be locked in the little black room? The system and the side quest seemed to know something, but they could not say. Since they had nothing to do, the system asked the side quest, "Why are you so free?" The side quest is so difficult. Do you want to go to heaven? Don't think that I won't hit you just because you're a spirit. Other people's side quests are so easy. Why is it so difficult for my host? Did I step on your grave in my past life and use your ashes for rice? The side quest looked at the limited edition golden truffle chocolate in the system's hand. It used the system's ashes to cook and eat his in its past life, so he stole the food in its fridge in this life. He had never seen such a shameless system, but then he thought about his host. The side quest was relieved. The two of them were of the same character. As expected of the pair of hosts who had the worst morals, the lowest bottom line, the least moral character, and the one whose conscience could poison a dog to death. The side quest said, because other people would reject the side quest, but you didn't reject it from beginning to end. The side quest will be upgraded automatically. If you reject it once, it will automatically return to the level 1 easy mode. Even if you don't reject it next time, it will still be a simple mission. The system said, "We never meant to reject." The side quest said, "This means that the difficulty of the side quest will automatically increase. If you keep accepting the side quest, the difficulty will always increase. This is the main system's setting and can't be changed." The side quest was angry. "I'm troubled too. The side quest has always been automatically assigned because simple missions don't need too many procedures to start." The side quest said, "I've never seen an idiot who keeps accepting side quests. Isn't this looking for death?" The system that was looking for death. The side quest asked coldly, "Hee, why didn't you reject it? You made me unable to automatically assign it and could only monitor the completion of the side quest." The system could not say that he could not reject it. That would be embarrassing. So he calmly replied, "Oh, it's hard, hee." The side quest was even angrier. "Are you crazy? Can't you reject it and let the side quest automatically return to level 1 difficulty? Do you know that the difficulty of your quest has increased to level 100? The system was expressionless. "Oh, hee awesome. Side quest. Now that the difficulty level is so high, I can't even rest. Every time there's a level 100 side quest, I have to pay full attention to it in case the device suddenly breaks down." The system pursed its lips. "Good luck." The side quest asked again, "Why didn't you reject the mission?" The system was silent for a moment before it began to chew on the chocolate. Why didn't he refuse? Because his equipment was broken. What other reason could there be? Could he say it? If he did, he would lose face. Therefore, he could only cry and act tough. That's because being invincible is so boring. That's why the side quests are our tonic. Side quest. Aya, this pair of hosts is really sick. He was actually courting death in such a cool manner. The branch was deeply shaken. The system turned around gracefully, as if nothing had happened. Tong Zi silently nibbled on the chocolate. In a place where no one knew, she silently looked up at the sky. If the host knew the reason why the side quests had become difficult, she would beat him to death. /quick. Chapter 27-25. It definitely would. Therefore, it was better to pretend that it didn't know about this matter. Let the host continue to misunderstand the side quest and jump to the side quest grave disco bar. The side quest felt a little cold, but it didn't know who was cursing it. The sun, which was close to noon, made the person lying on the bed move onto the blanket. A hand gently reached out from under the blanket. Countless ambiguous marks could be seen on the inside of her wrist. The man, who had heard the commotion, had already turned sideways. He reached out and was tying his tie. His suit jacket was casually draped on the back of the chair. He stood beside the mirror, wearing a light-colored shirt and black suit pants. The perfect clothes had a perfect slimming effect, making the curve of his waist show a beautiful outline. Yu Xiaoyun's eyes were gentle and affectionate. In the past, his deep feelings always had an ethereal, immortal aura. He was like a person who didn't eat the food of the mortal world. He looked beautiful and exquisite, but he was like an artistic decoration, without any sense of reality. People often looked at him and felt that young Master Yu was too cold and aloof. They couldn't get close to him. He also seemed out of place in this world. They were afraid that he would one day become a wild crane. But now, Yu Xiaoyun finally showed the strength and maturity of a man. The gentleness in his eyes also contained a burning desire. He casually loosened the tie that was half done and let the tie fall loosely on his chest. Then he walked to the bedside barefooted. The girl under the blanket seemed to have sensed something. She trembled and was about to escape. But before she could do anything, the man had already stretched out his strong arm, picked her up with the blanket, and pressed her into his arms. It was like hugging a doll that couldn't resist. Yu Xiaoyun reached out and took away the blanket covering her head, letting the blanket fall on her shoulders. The girl's shoulders were thin, but they were round and beautiful. There were traces of him on them. Yu Xiaoyun's eyes were extremely dark. He touched her face and felt the temperature of her trembling skin. At this moment, Yu Xiaoyun no longer had a trace of elegant, immortal aura. There was only a mature man with a greed and uncontrollable passion for his woman. He lowered his head and kissed the bandage on her face. His breath blew on the girl's face, giving her no chance to protest. The way he hugged her was too familiar and natural. She didn't even have the strength to resist. After kissing her, Yu Xiaoyun said, "I'll go to the company for a meeting today to help you deal with the backlog of work. Then, I'll arrange for a doctor to come and take a look at you." Wei Wei lowered her eyes. The corners of her eyes were red and watery. She pursed her lips and remained silent. Yu Xiaoyun knew that she was angry. He had gone overboard last night, and, in the end, he had nothing to lose. He could no longer suppress his thoughts, so he might as well force it a little. It was almost half coaxing before it was done. After she was injured, her mind was fragile. Midnight was the time when her heart was at its softest and most helpless. Her pitiful appearance should be the last moment of consolation. But he used it for something else. No wonder she was so angry when she woke up. Wei Wei Bai's big eyes were like grapes soaked in water, exceptionally clear and beautiful. She seemed to want to condemn him. However, she saw that the man was stubborn and thick-skinned. In the end, she lowered her head helplessly and sighed. Yu Xiaoyun stared at her helpless expression that was pretending to be mature and couldn't help but smile. Wei Wei Bai changed the topic in a low voice. "Didn't I say that I would return the thing to you?" When Yu Xiaoyun saw the side of her face, the tip of her small ear peeked out from her thick hair. He leaned over and said softly, almost touching the tip of her ear, "You don't have to return it. If you want, I can put in a gift box and walk over myself so that you can open it. / Chapter 27-26. Wei Wei Bai felt itchy in her ears. She couldn't help but mutter, "You sent yourself to me, and you still don't know who took advantage of you." If he sent himself to her, wouldn't she have to do the same? Yu Xiaoyun only felt that his heart had melted into a ball, and there was no sharp and hard thing in his heart. He nodded without principle. "Yes, I took advantage of you. It's all my fault. Why don't I go buy a durian and kneel down?" Wei Wei Bai, "You're addicted to self-abuse, aren't you?" She thought of the whip that was broken into pieces last night. Then she thought of the red marks on his back. Wei Wei Bai felt that she couldn't think about it anymore, or else her brain would be blocked. Yu Xiaoyun affectionately kissed her for a while, and finally left in a sticky manner. Lunch was prepared on the table. The new clothes were folded and put aside. Her body was dry, and the bedding was from early in the morning. It was changed. She was not alarmed. This meant that Yu Xiaoyun's movements were unusually careful. Love Garden was cleaned up, and all kinds of flowers were revealed. There was a beautiful scenery outside the window. Wei Wei Bai calmly put on her clothes, calmly rolled up her slightly long sleeves, and calmly looked at the marks on her skin. She was used to drinking. She sat at the dining table calmly and ate expressionlessly. The system was finally not released. He glanced at the favorability, and the male lead's favorability was actually 98. The charm of the whip last night was too great. The system cleared its throat and asked cautiously, "Why are you still angry?" Wei Wei Bai stared at the bowl faintly. "No, I'm not angry." System, the host was still angry, although she was still dedicated to the strategy and dedicated to sticking to the first position of the strategy. But as her system, of course he knew, when the host woke up from the car accident, when she held the mirror and saw the wound on her face, that gloomy expression, at that moment, the system thought that she was going to stab Yu Xiaoyan to death with a knife. Then the host was in a bad mood. Even now, he could not forget it. He went to the supermarket to look for beautifying medicine, intending to heal her disfigurement. The host said gloomily, "No need, it's fine like this." The system replied, "Is it good?" The host smiled and touched his wound. A creepy smile appeared on his pale face. "The taste of disfigurement is not bad. Hee. Damn, it felt like the surrounding temperature had dropped by 50 degrees. He was a polar bear that was going to freeze to death. Then he heard the host say lightly, "It's getting cold. Let Yu Xiaoyan die." The blow of disfigurement drove the host crazy. Wei Wei Bai finished her meal expressionlessly and said, "There are only a few days left before the Hainan Airlines project is completed. There is only one other mission left, which was for Yu Xiaoyan to praise her verbally." The system replied, "Yes, you can play after you're done." This time, the waiting time was a little longer. He couldn't go back after completing it. When Wei Wei Bai heard this, she revealed a gentle smile. "What are we playing?" The system replied, "Travel around the world or eat and drink." Wei Wei Bai said, "That's not fun." The system said, "How about—" Wei Wei Bai touched the bandage on her face. "How about we play with Yu Xiaoyan? After we're done with the mission, it must be exciting to jump off a building in front of him." The system said, "Are you still angry?" The blow of disfigurement was too big, causing the host to be mentally unstable. Wei Wei Bai smiled, a bright and sweet smile. "Of course not. Which eye of yours saw that I was angry? I just thought that it would be fun to become a ghost after death and ride on Yu Xiaoyan's neck every day." The system was speechless. "How is that fun? It's scary." The and read the at https://www.sashu.com/the and read the full article at https://www.sashu.com/ and read the full article at https://www.sashu.com and read the full article at https://m sashu.com the comma. Chapter 27:27. After the meeting, Yu Xiaoyan sat in the conference room and talked to the doctors from M country about the surgery. This was the most authoritative aesthetic surgery institution. After he finished talking, he turned off the video. Beside him, Qinshan was working hard to organize the information. Is the Hainan Airlines project going to start? It had been stopped for more than 2 months. If it stopped again, it would probably fail. Even if it started again now, it would lose more than 30% of the benefits. On a huge project, 30% of the benefits was very objective. The project had reached this point, no matter how it was done, it would be a loss. However, Qinshan knew that Yu Xiaoyan had his own plans. Even if the project was a loss, it had to be done because this project was to lay the foundation for the company's transformation. It could only be restarted earlier to reduce the losses. Yu Xiaoyan crossed his hands gently, and there was a gentle light in his dark eyes. He slowly smoothed his cuffs. There was an exceptionally clear bite mark on his wrist. Last night, he was too anxious. She bit him when she was in pain. Yu Xiaoyan touched the bite mark with his fingertips and said gently, "I'll go home and ask Wei Wei." Qinshan stopped organizing the information and looked desperate. Are we really working for her? All the industries were transferred to Wei Wei Bai. Now, they were not the only ones working. Yu Xiaoyan was also working. The despair came too violently. It was hard to accept for a moment. The boss had become a bootlicker. She had licked until she had nothing. Yu Xiaoyan looked up and looked at Chun Shan indifferently. After a long time, Chun Shan finally lowered his head. He was extremely aggrieved. All right, let her be the boss. I have no objections. If he dared to have any objections, Yu Xiaoyan could freeze him to death with his gaze. Yu Xiaoyan slowly got up and said, "Deal with the participants of the Hainan Airlines project. Some people think that I'm dead." These words were so cold that people couldn't help but feel numb on their backs. When Yu Xiaoyan returned, he saw that the big house was brightly lit. He walked in and saw that the butler and servants were all there. The butler came up and took his clothes for him. He bowed his head and said respectfully, "Mr. Yu." Yu Xiaoyan's expression was still calm. "Miss is willing to let you come back." He had once instructed the servants who were chased away to rest assured and receive their salaries, as if they were on vacation. If Wei Wei Bai told them to come back one day, only then would they be able to return. After all, he was used to using the servants and butlers that he had personally selected. It was not easy to find a group of outstanding servants with the same habits. He was afraid that she would find it inconvenient in the future, but he couldn't take care of her. If she needed a servant, she couldn't find one. So he decided to keep it for her. He just didn't expect that she would call him back so early. It seemed that his mood had improved. The butler nodded. "Miss has already eaten, but she doesn't seem to have a good appetite." Yu Xiaoyan couldn't help but smile. The man's eyes were filled with gentleness and affection. "She likes what I make." When he was learning how to cook, she was the only one who tasted his food. Wei Wei Bai was very picky. He had also spent a lot of effort to nourish her body and stomach. It was also for the sake of letting everything about him invade her life and become an indispensable habit for her. Habits are hard to change. For example, once loving her became a habit, it was unlikely that he could change it for the rest of his life. Yu Xiaoyan rolled up the cuffs of his shirt. The teeth marks were already a little red and swollen. When the butler saw it, his eyebrows moved. Yu Xiaoyan said, "It's okay. I'm happy to see it." Not only was he happy, but he also felt the slash to the download that a read on your phone. The comma. Chapter 27-28. The man's eyes darkened, and there was a hint of bewitchment in them. Then he smiled as if nothing had happened. In the future, there may be more wounds like this. You'll get used to it. The butler's face turned red, and he immediately left. Yu Xiaoyan went to the kitchen and made a bowl of Wei Wei Bai's favorite porridge. He also personally chose the ingredients to make a few fresh side dishes. Serve it for supper around 10 o'clock. He instructed in a low voice and then slowly wiped his wet fingers with a dry cloth. The man standing in the kitchen was extremely elegant. He threw the towel away, and the kitchen was extremely quiet. Everyone waited until he walked out before they dared to speak. In the future, all standards in the kitchen will be set by Mississippi, the kitchen butler instructed after Yu Xiaoyan left. Everyone nodded immediately. Yu Xiaoyan walked into the room and saw Wei Wei by squinting at the window, casually looking at the moon. She was wearing a loose robe. Her pants were too long. She rolled up her pants, revealing her delicate and beautiful ankles and round toes. Her black hair was wet and scattered. Yu Xiaoyan walked over, reached for a clean towel, and quietly walked behind her. The man slowly bent down, gently picked up some of her black hair with his fingers, and gently wiped it with the towel. Wei Wei Bai seemed to have just realized that there was someone behind her as she turned around. She saw Yu Xiaoyan lowering his head and wiping her hair. The man's eyelashes were very long, and his eyes were very deep, but it made the gentle curve at the corners of his eyes even more beautiful. His voice was hoarse. "How can you stand by the window after washing your hair? You'll get a headache." She had to take care of herself. Yu Xiaoyan's heart ached for her weak body. Back then, she was born with a difficult birth, and her body was weak to begin with. Not to mention the days she had spent in the Bai family all these years. Although she ate and drank a lot, she did not receive any good treatment. Bai Yanlan scolded and hit her as and when she wanted. Therefore, He could understand her pain. She could not struggle and wanted to take away the power in his hands. After all, to her, the people who had been abusing and humiliating her were all because they held power in their hands. Was that why they could treat her like this? Therefore, Yu Xiaoyan was very tolerant of her idea of seizing power. Bai Weiwei lowered her eyes and faintly looked outside. I just feel that the outside is pretty good. Yu Xiaoyan's fingers paused, and his gaze fell on her neck. There was a mark he had left behind. Because a day and a night had passed, the mark became even more obvious. The faint red color tempted his mind. He pursed his lips and did not say anything. This silence was a sign of a guilty conscience. Using the excuse of recuperating or other inconspicuous reasons, he restricted her freedom, prevent her from leaving the house. He was afraid that she would go out. Yu Xiaoyan bit her lip, and a rare trace of embarrassment appeared on her face. The self-loathing in his heart was still there. That was why he was so resistant to her idea of going out. How nice would it be if she could just stay in a house that he built forever? This way, she would be able to meet anyone and encounter anything. He knew everything. Wei Bai was still young, and there was almost a gap in their ages. Now, looking at their appearances, they knew that there was a difference in age. But it was not obvious yet. What about in the future? What if he slowly grew old while she was still young? Or what if she loved him and went back on her word? Yu Xiaoyan suppressed too many worries and did not show the slightest dissatisfaction or melancholy. Instead, Yu Xiaoyan revealed a gentle smile and gently wiped her wet hair. There's a banquet meeting in a week's time on the cruise ship. Come with me. It's good to relax. It's a banquet meeting. Quick transmigration system. Male god, come here. Chapter 27-29. A banquet meeting was the kind that was not considered a formal meeting. It was just a banquet where everyone gathered to talk about the progress of the project, although some ideas would appear, but they would not formally agree to anything. This was the first meeting he held about the project after the Hainan Airlines project stopped. Wei Bai did not stop the Hainan Airlines project from continuing. Yu Xiaoyan was not in a hurry. He would wait until she was happy and did not care about the project anymore. It was only then that it started. As for the banquet meeting, it was just to reassure those people and to take care of the family that had made a move on Wei Bai. He had collected almost all the information. It was time to clean it up. After all, Yu Xiaoyan's gaze fell on the side of Wei Bai's face under the thick medical bandage. It was a mistake that he would never forgive himself for. He could not keep the person who had hurt her as an eyesore. Wei Bai held her face with both hands and said without much interest, yes. A week later, it would be exactly 3 months. The side mission was almost completed. Suddenly, she felt the skin on her neck itch. The man's warm fingers passed through her long hair and caressed her skin unhurriedly. Wei Bai turned around strangely. What are you doing? Yu Xiaoyan's eyes lit up. He seemed to be a little embarrassed to lower his head. Nothing. I made supper. We'll eat it later. Although Wei Bai was not hungry yet, Yu Xiaoyan's cooking was delicious, so she nodded. Okay, Yu Xiaoyan said, it's too early to eat supper. Let's play a game. Wei Bai was still thinking about other things and was not prepared for it. What game? Yu Xiaoyan smiled. His pair of affectionate eyes were burning with her figure, as if they were locking onto something. A very good game. Wei Bai was stunned. She was pulled into his arms. Her black hair was draped over his body. The man's kiss carried a warm breath. He kissed her delicate earlobe with some trembling. Wei Bai, game. The man chuckled. After all, he was a monk who had never eaten meat before. When he suddenly ate meat, he couldn't stop his craving and wanted to eat more. Don't want to stop. It was after 12 o'clock when Wei ate supper. The housekeeper and the servants didn't dare to step forward and stood far away. He stood like a wooden sculpture before he could finally carry the supper in the incubator. A week passed neither quickly nor slowly. Anyway, Wei Bai felt that Yu Xiaoyan was like a cat that smelled fish, clinging to her every day. She couldn't kick him away even when she tried. However, the favorability didn't increase at all. It was still 98. The banquet was held on a cruise ship in international waters. In this place, if one fell into the water, it was basically over. Wei Wei Bai was wearing a Chong Sam and a priceless imperial jade bracelet. Yu Xiaoyan had personally bought it from the auction. It was said that the price had even set a new record for the auction. Yu Xiaoyan liked these broken stones and a pile of broken silk. Then, he used all these things on her. The girl's figure was beautiful and elegant. After being by Yu Xiaoyan's side for a long time, she naturally had an otherworldly temperament. She was exceptionally eye-catching. Even if there was a bandage on the side of her face, it didn't hurt her young and tender beauty. This was the second time Yu Xiaoyan had brought her to a public banquet. The last banquet almost released the demons in his heart. His desire for the girl was like a beast that had been released from its cage, unable to be suppressed. He almost did something irreparable to her. This time, he still didn't like it very much. To read at https://www.sashu.com to read at https://m.sashu.com. Chapter 27:30. The gazes of others fell on her. Yu Xiaoyan lowered his eyes and let Wei Wei Bai hold his arm. Then they walked into the crowd. The man was wearing a fitted black suit. His waist was unusually smooth, and his legs under the suit were unusually slender. The disadvantages of Asians wearing suits didn't appear on him at all. For the first time, an elegant and cold expression appeared on Yu Xiaoyan's exquisite face. His gentle gaze fell on the girl beside him. The girl was wearing a crescent white Chong Sam. The Chong Sam had fine old-fashioned dark patterns. The expensive fabric didn't look bloated at all. Instead, it made the girl's delicate appearance look even more cold and noble. If there were still people who doubted the rumor that Yu Xiaoyan had fallen in love, now everyone believed it, because when Yu Xiaoyan entered the arena, that pair of gentle eyes, at this moment, were filled with a bone-piercing light, and this light was given to the girl beside him. The two of them were like the natural center of attention. Those business tycoons who were qualified to talk to them couldn't wait to go up and exchange pleasantries. The Hainan Airlines project was stopped. Yu Xiaoyan's business was transferred. None of them could cover up this man's brilliance, nor did they make anyone look down on him. A real loser wasn't like Yu Xiaoyan. Yu Xiaoyan's attitude was gentle and natural as he dealt with people. His casual words revealed some things about the business meeting. Some people considered it, while others agreed. Banquets and meetings were always a little casual. After chatting, Yu Xiaoyan was worried that Wei Wei Bai was tired, so he took her to a corner. This was a semi-public resting area with round sofas to sit. Wei Wei Bai sat down. Yu Xiaoyan reached out and stroked her hair. He said softly, "I'll get you some juice. You can have dinner later. Tonight, you'll sleep on the cruise." After saying that, he couldn't help but smile. However, she seemed to have understood something, and the tips of her ears immediately turned red. Yu Xiaoyan's eyes were dark, and his thin lips curved slightly. Then, he turned around to get her some juice. Chun Shan was also wearing a suit. When he saw Yu Xiaoyan coming over, he immediately walked over and whispered beside him, "He's already under surveillance." Yu Xiaoyan's footsteps did not stop. He walked to the dining table and began to pick fruits. He was going to get her some juice. Fresh fruit was better, and he could use a few kinds of fruits to make a good juice. The man held an orange in his hand. His voice was low and calm. "In 10 minutes, we'll arrest him." Chun Shan nodded respectfully. "Yes." Yu Xiaoyan paused again and seemed to be a little troubled. Chun Shan immediately felt that something was wrong and asked, "What's wrong? Is there a change in plan?" Yu Xiaoyan touched another lemon for seasoning. "That's not important. There's no juicer here. Go get one from the kitchen." Chun Shan, Wei Wei Bai gloomily said to the system, "Riding on his neck is too tiring. How about I hang upside down on his back?" "System, are you planning to practice acrobatics by becoming a ghost?" Suddenly, a pleasantly surprised voice sounded. "It's you. Are you here for the banquet too?" Wei Wei Bai looked up and saw a man in a blue suit holding a glass of wine and looking at her with a bright smile. She was silent for a moment. It seemed to be the male celebrity she had used to provoke Yu Xiaoyan. She just couldn't remember his name. She had always been forgetful when it came to tools and cannon fodder. Just as she was about to show a perfunctory smile, and say a few polite words. Suddenly, her arm was grabbed by someone. With a pull, she fell into a warm and strong embrace. Then, she felt her lips being kissed heavily. The man who was hugging her slowly looked up. There was a hint of gloomy coldness in his beautiful eyes. "I'm sorry." His voice was indifferent. "She's taken." Chapter 2731. Yu Xiaoyan's fingers were still on the girl's chin. There was a thin layer of ice in his eyes, but there was an insincere smile at the corner of his mouth. Or is it that the woman you like is someone else's woman? This sentence was too harsh. The celebrity trembled heavily, and his face turned pale. He immediately smiled awkwardly and retreated. He didn't even continue to exchange pleasantries and left. Wei Weibai took another look at the fleeing figure. The man beside her, whose eyes were already cold, became even more dissatisfied at this moment. His voice was slightly hoarse, and he smiled lazily. "Why, do you like this kind of young boy?" Their ages were not far apart. At least compared to him, that male celebrity was much younger. Wei Weibai wrinkled her nose and then said expressionlessly, "Sour." The coldness in Yu Xiaoyun's eyes lessened, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. "Why do I feel that it's sweet?" Wei Weibai looked at him blankly, but she realized that he was approaching her step by step. She retreated and finally curled up on the sofa. There was no escape. She was hidden in the round sofa. When others looked up, they only saw Yu Xiaoyun bending down slightly, as if he was saying something. Yu Xiaoyun's back was facing the light, and a shadow shrouded the girl. His elegant and beautiful face had a hint of evil charm in the shadow. His fingers gently caressed her lips. "Sour or sweet? Do you want to try?" Wei Weibai's face immediately flushed red, and she quickly shook her head. Yu Xiaoyun smiled, but the dark and paranoid look in his eyes did not disappear. Instead, it became even worse. His voice was muffled by the sound of sand. "I don't want it. I don't want to force a sale." This hooligan's words were completely unreasonable. Then Wei Weibai felt the battle between sweet and sour. His fingers pressed on her shoulders, trapping her in the sofa. After a long time, he wiped the moisture at the corner of her lips. He whispered softly, "Sweet or sour?" Wei Weibai, shameless. Yu Xiaoyun smiled and returned to being an elegant, cold, and noble young master. He held her hand. "Let's go dance." The dance was casual. The two of them were social, but the music was not intense. After the dance slowly finished, the banquet was almost over. Yu Xiaoyun took Wei Weibai to eat, and he even personally went to the kitchen on the cruise ship to make soup for her. After dinner, the fireworks show began. Yu Xiaoyun held Wei Weibai's hand. Under the beautiful fireworks, she heard the man's voice was soft. "I want to watch the fireworks every year." This sentence was Young's. After he was Yu Xiaoyun's you was Yu. However, he heard the girl beside him turn her head to look at him. Her eyes were extremely gentle under the dazzling fireworks. She responded casually and continued to look up at the fireworks. The gorgeous light and shadow of the fireworks fell. Her beautiful figure was outlined vividly and beautifully. Yu Xiaoyun was stunned for a long time. Then, he lowered his head and smiled. "Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 99. After the fireworks, it was already 11 o'clock. Yu Xiaoyun stayed in the room until Wei Weibai fell asleep. Then, he put on his slippers and went out. The sleeping Wei Weibai slowly opened her eyes. She turned over and used her fingers to support the side of her face that was fine. Is the strategy time still pending? The system flipped through the information. It found that the information had changed. No, it's finally updated. The strategy time is 3 days. Wei Weibai, was 3 days a joke? /mobile reading. Chapter 2732. It must be. Or was it because the time limit was stuck and there was no more? The system was silent. After all, it had to conquer someone like Yu Xiaoyun in 3 days. It would be faster to just kill him. It had been more than half a year since the host transmigrated. She had almost finished the male lead and the side quest. Finally, Wei Weibai rubbed her chin and sighed. There are advantages to waiting for time. This was equivalent to giving her a free period of time. Although this free period of time was not stable, it was better than nothing. Of course, there were disadvantages as well. If she waited for a long time, she would really be tortured in this world forever. Wei Bai lifted the blanket. Okay, let's get to work. The system said, there's still 3 days, no rush. Wei Bai touched her face. This body is already disfigured. It's torture for me to stay in this body for a day. The system said, I'll buy you a disfigurement healing potion. Wei Bai hesitated, but still rejected. No need. The system was confused. Wasn't this what the host liked the most? Why did she keep rejecting it? Wei Bai sighed. After all, I've always been beautiful. This is the first time in my life that I've experienced a disfigurement. This is a special experience. The system said, then what did you experience? Wei Bai said, I experienced that I want to beat that old bastard Yu Xiaoyan to death. Those who abuse my face will not have a good life. I want to keep this disfigured face to annoy him. The system, Wei Bai sneered, he wants me to do plastic surgery. No, I'll use this face to scare him for as long as I stay by his side. The system, Wei Bai said with bad intentions, I've thought about it. The next time he dares to climb into bed, I'll remove the bandage at the most critical moment and scare him until he can't do it. The system rubbed its face. After the host's disfigurement, it was not because there was a problem with her mind that she did not recover. It was because her brain was all wrong. What she cared about was that if she looked bad, she would make the male lead feel bad. What kind of fucking revenge was this? The system thought that it understood the host well enough. Wrong. He felt that he would never be able to understand the host's brain. What she cared about was not something that normal people would care about. Wei Bai paused and waved her hand. Forget it. I'm sick of being disfigured. Let's go home. The system asked, how do you plan to end this? 1 hour to go. The time for the side quest was almost up. The end of the Hainan Airlines project was considered complete, because it was impossible to activate in such a short time. There was only one mission left. Even if she was better than him, Yu Xiaoyan had to say it himself. Previously, Wei Bai had tempted him to admit that she was amazing. But Yu Xiaoyan didn't think that way. He didn't admit that she was amazing either. Therefore, the bait was considered a failure. Wei Bai put on her slippers and walked out slowly. There will be a chance. After all, I don't believe that the bad guy won't resist if I force him to his death. Regardless of whether it was stabbing Yu Xiaoyan to death or use some other method, she would always have a chance to fish in troubled waters. The system tried its best to look into the torture room, and it really did see the bad guys. Yes, that bad guy seems to have brought a dozen poisonous snakes. Wei Bai was speechless. Poisonous snakes. She didn't like these round animals. Wei Bai asked in disdain, can the poisonous snakes kill people? The system said, of course they can, but it takes time. If we can get the snake serum, we should be able to get it back. Download the at https://m/sashu.com/. Chapter 2733. Wei Bai, not poisonous enough. Add more venom to the poison. System, this was the first time I'd heard of someone adding venom to a poisonous snake. Wei Bai, 1 bite and you'll be done for, the kind that can't be saved. System, are you planning to commit suicide? This was the host's super cliché old trick. Die for you. Are you touched? Are you miserable? Torture? Then hurry up and increase your affinity. By Wei. Am I such a dog blood cliché? System, what do you think? Wei Bai, I am. System, such thick-skinned words, as expected of the familiar host's way of speaking. The system, which had been worried about depression because of disfigurement, finally sighed in relief. Wei Bai had already reached the corridor and saw the torture room. Yu Xiaoyan was inside. There were also more than 10 poisonous snakes. Wei Bai, there's another way to complete the mission. Immediately bite Yu Xiaoyan, then I'll rush over to hug him and say goodbye to him. Normal men were about to die. They would also be so touched that their affinity would increase. Then they would coax her and say that she was amazing, and such a small mission could be completed easily. System, how much did she hate the male lead? Even the routine had to be reversed. She just didn't want him to have an easy time, right? The poisonous snakes were used to poison him to death. Wei Wei Bai yawned and finally strolled to the door of the room. The sound insulation was good. She couldn't hear the sound inside, so Wei Wei Bai reached out and knocked on the door casually. The door opened. It was Chun Shan. His serious face was filled with murderous intent, unusually unfriendly, but he saw the person outside the door clearly. He was stunned. Wei Wei Bai stood at the door. Her petite figure wearing pajamas of the same color as Yu Xiaoyan had a delicate beauty. Chun Shan was about to say something. Wei Wei Bai had already stepped in. The room was filled with the smell of blood. There were 3 men lying on the ground, covered in blood. One of the men in the middle was obviously the main character. He fiercely looked up, his face full of blood as he said, "Yu Xiaoyan, if you kill me, don't think you'll have a good time. My family will not let you off." Not far away, Yu Xiaoyan, who was wearing pajamas and slippers, sat on a chair. The man's features were cold and elegant, but because of the gentleness at the corners of his eyes, he appeared to be good-looking and warm. He laughed in a low voice and slowly drank a mouthful of hot tea before indifferently saying, I'll wait for your family to come find trouble with me. Perhaps I'm too much of a slave to my wife. Everyone thinks that I'm not a man anymore. In the past, who would dare to use such crude and clumsy methods to harm the people around him? Moreover, she was the woman he, Yu Xiaoyan, loved the most. Didn't they think that he had cultivated his character during this period of time? Did they really think that he was easy to bully if he didn't clean up the situation? These people really thought that he was a Buddha because he was a vegetarian. Yu Xiaoyan's eyes were as gentle as the spring breeze. His words were so cold that it made people tremble. Throw it into the sea. After saying that, he suddenly realized something and immediately turned around to look. He saw a familiar figure standing at the door. Wei Wei Bai was wearing pajamas and slippers. Her long hair was scattered behind her back, and her delicate little face was expressionless. She slowly looked at the blood all over the ground. Then, she casually glanced at the various torture tools beside her. A Jura field, hell, a slaughterhouse full of the smell of blood. She was out of place here, and even more out of place was the elegant and cold Yu Xiaoyan who was sitting on the chair with a teacup in his hand, and his eyes full of affection. To read the full article at https://www.sashu.com to TXT download at https://www.sashu.com to read on. To facilitate your next reading, you can click on the Chapter 2734. When Yu Xiaoyan saw that it was her, his eyebrows trembled. He pursed his lips, and a trace of helplessness appeared on his calm and indifferent face. The man immediately put down the teacup, then casually picked up the coat on the back of the chair and walked directly to her side. He shook the large mail coat and put it on her. Then Yu Xiaoyan bent down and reached out to touch her head. He asked gently, "Why are you here? Can't sleep?" Wei Wei Bai tiptoed, as if she wanted to see the people being tortured. However, Yu Xiaoyan quietly moved his body to prevent her from seeing. Wei Wei Bai frowned and said unhappily, "Yu Xiaoyan, do you think I'm weak?" Yu Xiaoyan's eyes curved. "How could that be? My Wei Wei can cheat all my assets. How are you weak?" Wei Wei Bai had just woken up, so there were still some sleep marks on her face, and her hair was messy. She was as stubborn as a child. She opened her pair of watery eyes and spoke softly, as if she was an adult asking for a reward. "Then am I better than you?" When Yu Xiaoyan saw her like this, his heart melted into spring water. His voice was hoarse, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. "Yes, you're much better than me. Mission accomplished. It was easy. It was just a lie. For Wei Wei Bai, it was never a problem." The smile on her face disappeared. She reached out to push him away and walked forward. "Since I'm better than you, why didn't you tell me what happened? You're so perfunctory." Yu Xiaoyan stood behind her and spread his hands helplessly. His face was begging for mercy. "It's too late. You need to sleep." Her body needed to recuperate. He rarely let her sleep so late at night. Wei Wei Bai turned her head. There was a stunning coldness in her eyes. She smiled. You just dislike me for being a burden. This person is the one who disfigured me, right? Yu Xiaoyan stared at her for a while before finally sighing and nodding. Wei Wei Bai sneered. She casually took a whip from the torture tools and whipped it fiercely at the man in the middle. The force was terrifyingly strong. She said to the system, if I can't beat this disfigured person to death, then it's my loss. System, how much does the host resent disfigurement? He lashed out with the whip several times. A hand gently held her wrist. He stopped her from continuing to smoke. Wei Wei Bai glared at him. Yu Xiaoyan seemed to be admitting defeat. All right, Wei Wei, your body is still weak. What if your hand hurts? Besides, such a bloody thing was not suitable for her. Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips. The corners of her eyes were a little red, and a trace of grievance appeared on her face. Yu Xiaoyan's heart skipped a beat as he gently removed her whip. His voice was calm but firm. Those who bully you, I will help you bully them back. Wei Wei Bai stomped on his foot. You bullied me too. Yu Xiaoyan's lips trembled. It really hurt. There was a hint of a smile in his voice. So now I'm lying flat and letting you bully me, okay? Wei Wei Bai took a few steps back and snorted. You sure know how to sweet talk. Yu Xiaoyan reached out to hug her, but paused. Wei Wei Bai looked at him in confusion, but she saw that his face had turned pale. Just as she was about to move, she heard Yu Xiaoyan's fingers tremble as he said softly, Wei Wei, don't move. Wei Wei Bai looked at him blankly. Yu Xiaoyan's mind twitched as he stared at the top of her head. A snake, bright and colorful. It was obvious that it was highly poisonous. The snake coiled down from the light fixture, and its fangs were pointed at her neck. Because it had not touched it yet, Wei Wei Bai did not even feel the temperature of the poisonous snake. The rest of the people had also seen the poisonous snake. Everyone's expression changed, but they did not dare to move. They were afraid that the slightest movement would cause the poisonous snake to fall on Wei Wei Bai's neck. This kind of poisonous snake would instinctively wrap around the neck of an animal. Once it fell on Wei Wei Bai's neck, there would be no way to get it off. Slash. Chapter 2735. At this time of crisis, the man lying on the ground suddenly laughed hysterically. Yu Xiaoyan, I'm going to die with you. Go to hell. After saying that, more than 10 colorful poisonous snakes crawled out of his body. The scene was chaotic. The chaotic sound alarmed the poisonous snake on Wei Wei Bai's head. It opened its poisonous fangs like lightning and quickly bit Wei Wei Bai's neck. In an instant, Yu Xiaoyan's pupils constricted. He suddenly rushed over. He had already taken a short knife from the bodyguard. Everything was like slow motion in a movie. The knife in Yu Xiaoyan's hand was stuck in the poisonous snake's fangs at the critical moment. The snake's tail wrapped around the man's arm. It turned to attack him. Yu Xiaoyan heaved a sigh of relief and cut off the poisonous snake's head neatly. Poisonous blood splattered out. Then he immediately turned around, pressed the back of the girl's head with one hand, and pressed her into his arms. At this moment, Yu Xiaoyan realized that his whole body was covered in cold sweat. The kind of fear that came from the trembling of the bones. It could almost drive him crazy. His voice was low and trembling. Fortunately, you're fine. If something happened to her, his world would collapse. But in the next second, he heard Wei Wei Bai's weak voice. Yu Xiaoyan, my leg hurts. This sentence was unusually calm, as if it was an ordinary greeting. Yu Xiaoyan's fingers stiffened, and his breathing stopped. Then he lowered his head and found that there was a poisonous snake wound on Wei Wei Bai's leg. Chen Shan and the others subdued more than a dozen poisonous snakes. But no one noticed that Wei Wei Bai's leg was bitten by a small snake as small as a chopstick. This snake was unusually poisonous. Wei Wei Bai's leg began to turn black and purple. He immediately picked up by Wei Wei and yelled, "Search them for me. Search them for the serum." It was impossible for a person who had a snake not to have a backup. Chen Shan immediately rushed over and knocked out the man who released the poisonous snake. Then he stripped off his clothes. Yu Xiaoyan also rushed out. It would take time to search for the serum. She needed to go to a safe place. She didn't know if there were any more hidden snakes in that room. and he remembered that there were doctors on board for the banquet, and it was the kind that was very famous. He kicked open the doctor's door and yelled at the doctor who was preparing to sleep, "Get up and save her." He put Wei Wei Bai on the bed. The doctor was also frightened and immediately went to find a medical kit. The snake's venom flowed through the blood to the heart. Although Yu Xiaoyan immediately used a cloth to tie her legs, it was too late. Her face darkened visibly. Even his bright eyes had lost their luster. Wei Wei Bai was trembling all over. Her face was so pale that it made people despair. However, she pursed her lips tightly. From beginning to end, she only said that her leg hurt and didn't say anything else. The girl's lips were already extremely dim. She lay on the bed. Her delicate and soft face lost its vitality. She didn't say anything and just obediently watched Yu Xiaoyan desperately hug her. The doctor rushed over. He saw that Yu Xiaoyan had already cut open the wound with a knife. The poisonous blood began to flow down from the fair skin of her leg. Then, the man knelt on one knee and lowered his head to suck the blood. This was an inefficient mistake, and it was especially dangerous. The doctor was about to stop him. The crisp sound of a slap rang out. Wei Wei Bai got up halfway and slapped Yu Xiaoyan's face heavily. Chapter 2736. The man's fair face turned red in an instant, and the handprint was exceptionally clear. He looked up. His eyes were extremely red, and the despair and madness on his face was frightening. Wei Wei Bai said word by word, "It's useless. The venom has already entered my body. If you suck my blood like this, it's useless except for yourself. You should know better than me." Understood. How could he not understand? But was he supposed to watch as she was tortured right in front of his eyes? His fingers clasped her fingertips tightly, as if he was begging. The man was extremely humble. "Wei Wei, don't stop me." He couldn't do nothing and let her continue to be so weak. A poisonous snake that could make the enemy perish together with her must be specially raised. This kind of poisonous snake was highly poisonous. Even if there was an anti-venom serum, it might not be able to save her. Yu Xiaoyan just understood too well, and his mind was too clear. Only then did he know how low Wei Wei Bai's survival rate was. His tone trembled, and he couldn't help but raise his voice. "You can't do this to me. You can't do this to me." Stop him from saving her, even if it was just an ineffective rescue. He was also saving himself, because if he just stood by and watched her die, he would not be able to do anything. He even felt that if he died, he wouldn't have to suffer this kind of torture. The man who had always been elegant and strong actually showed panic and despair in his eyes. Wei Wei Bai half leaned against the bed, as if she could smell the smell of death between her breaths. She chuckled softly. "Yu Xiaoyan, don't cry." As if she wanted to comfort him, she reluctantly reached out and touched his hair. It was as intimate as when he touched her. "I want to be better than you. I want power," she said with a weak smile. Yu Xiaoyan's voice was hoarse. "I'll give it to you. I'll give you whatever you want." But Bai Weiwei looked at him tenderly. Her round eyes held a moist smile. "You know, you're provoking people." Yu Xiaoyan's eyes were red, but even so, his eyes were still so affectionate and beautiful. Wei Wei Bai's fingertips fell on his soft eyelids. "If I'm stronger than you, I can protect you." Her voice was soft and gentle. "With power, I can make you." Bai Weiwei slowly bent down, lowered her eyes, and planted a kiss on the ends of his red eyes. "Don't cry." Yu Xiaoyun's eyes widened, but the tears in his eyes did not fall. He did not cry. The girl's face was already leaning weakly on his shoulder. "I remember back then, you were hiding under the chestnut tree in the love garden and crying secretly. I wondered if you were bullied as well." Yu Xiaoyan stiffened. He had secretly cried before. The chestnut trees in the love garden were very dense. Under the tree was a secret location. The girl's voice was soft, and there was a smile in it. "I wanted to get close to you, but you glared at me coldly before turning around and leaving." Her breath was sweet and soft, and her voice gradually weakened. "But your eyes seem to say that you like me, so..." He had sunk into the abyss. Yu Xiaoyan had no impression of this matter. At this moment, it sounded like a heart-wrenching pain and regret. He begged in despair. "I like you, know, I love you. It was just that it was many years too late." Many years ago, she liked him, but he turned around and left. Many years later, he liked her. She could not abandon him. Yu Xiaoyan grabbed the clothes on her back tightly. The girl's voice gradually quieted down. He wanted to shout, to scream at her to wake up, but the words that came out of his mouth were almost lost. His thin lips trembled. He finally hugged her and buried his face in her hair, crying silently. To read the full article at https://www.sashu.com to read on. Com. Chapter 2737. He almost vomited blood and cried. But there was no sound, just like when he was very young, hiding under the chestnut tree and crying secretly. It was extremely quiet. There was not a single sound. It was indeed when he was most desperate and in pain to his soul. If at that time he did not turn around and like the little her, then they wouldn't have missed it. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 100. Ding, 12 o'clock. The 3-month side mission is complete. There are 3 days left. Do you want to stay? Yes. A lazy voice sounded. Wei Wei Bai sat on the bed expressionlessly. She watched as Chen Shan found the serum and injected it into her body. Chen Shan seemed to have noticed something. He looked at her body in shock. But when he saw Yu Xiaoyan hugging Wei Wei Bai, he did not want to let go. But he did not dare to say anything to persuade him. The doctor was also trembling, like Chen Shan, desperately trying to save a dead person. And from the beginning to the end, the man was hugging her. He was so quiet, so desperate that he was rotting in silence. But it made people feel the most suffocating and the deepest pain. Wei Wei Bai hugged her chest with both hands. In her soul state, her emotions began to slowly return. Although the return was slow, it made her frown a little unaccustomed. She had almost no emotional fluctuations in the plane. Everything depended on her acting skills. So when she felt the throbbing feeling in her heart, she was not used to it. The system reminded, "Why aren't you leaving?" Wei Wei Bai touched her chin. "I haven't ridden on Yu Xiaoyan's neck yet, have I?" The system, well, it was afraid that the host who lost the emotion blocker would suddenly feel pain and discomfort. After all, once people had emotional fluctuations, guilt, empathy were all increasing rapidly. In the end, the host did not forget to practice acrobatics on Yu Xiaoyan. The system. So the original host has seen the crying male lead when she was young? Wei Wei Bai had been to the chestnut tree before. She even found a box and buried it. The system thought she was playing games out of boredom. After all, what kind of time machine game was this? Wasn't it just digging up a broken box after 10 or 8 years to see how stupid he used to be? Wei Wei Bai said calmly, "No, I made it up. Okay, I got it. I'm used to it." Wei Wei Bai, "I think the atmosphere is too quiet, so I want to tell you a story to lighten the mood." System. The male lead had been fooled into a daze, thinking that he had really missed out on his childhood love. Wei Wei Bai sighed. "Who knew you would believe it? It's my fault." The host who had lost the emotional shield. It was even more ruthless. He was impressed. 3 days was enough time for Wei Wei Bai's body to be transported off the ship and sent back to the Bai family's old mansion. They cleaned up the body and prepared the coffin. Wei Wei Bai didn't really hang upside down on Yu Xiaoyan or ride his neck. Yu Xiaoyan was busy. The man was dressed in a black suit and started to work as an undertaker. He cleaned up the body bit by bit. He sewed up the wound on her leg, removed the bandage on her face, and started to put makeup on the wound on her face. It was not pretty, especially when the skin of the dead was grayish-green. Wei Wei Bai looked at it with disdain. Yu Xiaoyan was unusually quiet as he carefully dressed her up. After she died, he didn't say a word. He had always been cold and elegant, noble and quiet. At https://www.sashu.com/full text at https://www.sashu.com download text at https://www.sashu.com at https://m/sashu.com the Chapter 2738. It was so quiet that it was lifeless. It was like death. Wei Wei Bai floated cross-legged in the air and was in a daze with him. On the last day, she was lying in the coffin's freezer. The young girl's face was as delicate and flawless as a flower after special makeup. Her soft and delicate lips were also exceptionally red. She lay quietly in the freezer, her skin sparkling like jade. She was wearing a red Chong Sam, gorgeous and luxurious. This was the best Chong Sam in Yu Xiaoyun's collection, but he didn't let her wear it, because the Chong Sam had a story. It was a wedding dress made for herself by an embroiderer who died for love, because her dead lover had gone to do business and never returned. And what he liked the most was the way she looked in the Chong Sam. She had embroidered this Chong Sam for 3 years for him. She had worked hard, and her heart was full of love. 3 years later, the news of her lover's death came. The Chong Sam was new because no one had the chance to wear it. Yu Xiaoyun collected it because of the exquisite embroidery. That story didn't touch him at all. It wasn't until he met Wei Wei Bai that he said, "Just look at the Chong Sam. It's not good." He loved her, so he wanted to pamper her. He wanted to hold her in his hands and take care of her carefully. Even if he thought too much, he couldn't bear to let her have any bad feelings. Wei Wei Bai just smiled and said, "Why are you hiding this dress?" Yu Xiaoyun listened and revealed a gentle smile. "Perhaps in the future, when we are old, very, very old, I will personally put on for you when you die. When we go to the Yellow Springs, we can still get married again." Wei Wei Bai spat. "We haven't gotten married yet. How can we do it again?" Yu Xiaoyun said, "When I make 100 pieces of jade jewelry for you as your dowry, I will marry you." Only then did Bai Weiwei realize why he had been unhurriedly making those jade jewelry for her. It turned out that he was waiting to give it to her as a dowry. The jade was warm and waiting for the fated to gather. This was probably the deepest expression of love this man had ever shown. It was also the most romantic thing he could do. Everything was at the funeral. Yu Xiaoyun quietly dealt with everything. His expression was indifferent, and his eyes were dead and lifeless. Shinshan followed him and forced him to eat, but he couldn't force him to sleep. He did not take a break from the beginning to the end. He was like a clockwork robot. At the funeral, he stood beside the coffin and looked at the young girl in the coffin who looked like a flower. Finally, the man slowly reached out and touched her face. He spoke softly, his voice unusually dry and hoarse. "I thought that I would leave before you. After all, she was still so young, so cute. It was the most tender, the best age. He was the one who should have died early with a rotten heart. The exterior was bright and beautiful, but underneath the shell was rotten to the core." The corners of Yu Xiaoyun's mouth twitched, revealing an ugly smile. "You shouldn't have met me. No one who loved him had a good ending. It seemed that when he was very young, his family had once hired someone to check his feng shui. When the feng shui master saw him, he patted his head and said, 'Deep love will not live long, and extreme wisdom will be damaged. In the future, your life should be rich and noble, but sigh.' No one believed that sigh. He didn't believe it either. Later on, for some reason, every time in the dead of night, he would think of that sentence, that sigh. He couldn't remember what the feng shui master looked like, but he remembered his sentence. Deep love? He didn't believe in this the most, but he found that deep love was the most correct sentence. He couldn't forget his lost parents, self-loathing, and betrayal of their education. But to her, the whole world collapsed. In the end, he pursued only one person who loved him like the whole world. He got it, but he lost it again. /fast /fast to txt download fast to read on. Fast, comma. Chapter 2739. Everything had been settled. After the funeral, Yu Xiaoyun came out to clean up the situation. Although there wasn't a river of blood, the families involved in the assassination were either dead or injured. After Yu Xiaoyun, who had been silent for a period of time, came out this time, no one dared to underestimate him anymore. Everyone trembled in fear at the mention of his name. As for Wei Wei Bai's death, it didn't cause much of a reaction. After all, she was just Yu Xiaoyun's vassal. Although Yu Xiaoyun avenged her so much after her death, It was just a moment of recklessness. After all, who could really love a woman to death? However, the news of Yu Xiaoyun giving the industry to Wei Wei Bai was widely spread in the female circle. Before she died, she received extreme love from a man. She didn't die in vain. Chen Shan only let out a sigh when he heard such vicious rumors. Then, he returned to the Bai family's old mansion. After Wei Wei Bai's death, the Bai family's door sign had never been removed. It was as if Yu Xiaoyun felt that when her soul returned, she would still see this place as familiar as before. She might stay a little longer. Chen Shan came to the front of the room. In the corridor here, the wind was blowing, and the fallen leaves actually carried a hint of desolation. It was already autumn. He still remembered that in the lotus pond, a group of men were desperately digging for lotus roots. In the end, a few of them even got 2 kilograms of lotus roots to bring home to stew. However, the lotus roots tasted really good. They were sticky and powdery. The lotus leaves had been cleaned, and the other flowers were blooming. When this place was designed, there were all kinds of flowers. Old Master Bao was also really elegant. He liked these broken things of flowers and plants. As a result, Yu Xiaoyun, who grew up in the Bai family, didn't hate these things. But once there was no one, this place was terrifyingly cold. Chen Shan stood at the door with his briefcase. The door was open. Yu Xiaoyun was sitting at the desk with all kinds of tassels on it, all kinds of small tools. There was also a large box of all kinds of beautiful nephrite jade, jadeite, southern red tourmaline, and so on. They all bought the most expensive ones. Jadeite, just a large imperial jade bead, had to be bought in advance. Chen Shan looked at it and felt that it was just a box of broken stones. However, it was good that Yu Xiaoyun had something to do. He walked in quietly and said in a low voice, "I've already cleaned up the entire group. The contract for the Hainan Airlines project has also been terminated. Our next step is to enter the country market and win the multinational project for the next 2 years." The maritime aviation project had caused them to suffer heavy losses. However, he also used the failure as an excuse to reorganize the internal and external affairs of the company. Now, some of the problems left over from the previous transformation had been cleared up. Although the company's assets had shrunk a little, it was worth it, as long as Yu Xiaoyun was there. Even if they faced failure, they would not be afraid to continue working hard. He was afraid that Yu Xiaoyun would not be able to pass this hurdle. Deep love is short-lived. Yu Xiaoyun's fingers paused. The tip of his finger was a light purple tassel, and below it was a bright red jade medallion. It was an exceptionally beautiful rock filled with water. He slowly raised his eyes. Under his long and narrow eyelashes, a pair of gentle eyes were filled with emptiness. His thin face under the light by the window almost turned into a lonely pale white. Yu Xiaoyun looked at Chen Shan for a few seconds, as if he was a little slow in thinking about who he was. Then, he was not interested and slowly knitted his red jade pendant. There were also some beads for making bracelets on the wooden table. They were all very beautiful. Fast // fast the fast comma. Chapter 2740. It was fine as long as Yu Xiaoyun liked it. He was just afraid that he wouldn't even like this. Then Chen Shan really didn't know what to do. Looking at Yu Xiaoyun like this, his heart also throbbed in pain, as if someone was hammering his brain with an awl. As a man, he didn't know how to comfort him. When he first saw Yu Xiaoyun, he felt that this guy was good-looking and had a pair of unusually seductive eyes. Of course, as a normal man, he didn't have any other thoughts. Did he have no other thoughts? This had to be clarified. But he was so exquisite and had such a pair of eyes. In the eyes of the older generation, this kind of child couldn't be raised for long. If someone gave him a cheap name when he was young and raised him crudely, he would be raised in the mud. When he grew up, his skin would be rougher and he would look a little sunny. Then it might be easier to raise him, but a place like the Bai family forced him to be pampered. Thus, he developed the sensitivity of the 7 orifices heart. It also raised him to be fickle and affectionate. When the poor little Wei Wei Bai appeared, he was relieved. Yu Xiaoyun had her. He finally had a man's offensive power, possessiveness, and direct violent love. He no longer looked like an immortal with a short life. He even ate the meat. It made them overjoyed. In the end, the poor little girl died before Yu Xiaoyan. Chen Shan felt that Yu Xiaoyan had brought out Sister Lin's sentimentality. He tried to comfort him. I think she still wants you to be well. Yu Xiaoyan raised his head slightly. His pair of gentle and beautiful eyes were as cold as ice. He stared at Chen Shan for a long time before saying slowly, "Give me the transfer of assets." Chen Shan was puzzled. Weren't they all transferred to Wei Wei Bai's name? However, after Wei Wei Bai's death, these things still returned to Yu Xiaoyan's name by default. Chen Shan brought the things over. They were all in the study room. Yu Xiaoyan didn't pay much attention to them. In the past, he had spent all his effort to scheme for these assets. Now, these things were no longer interesting to Yu Xiaoyan. Yu Xiaoyan opened the transfer of assets. Wei Wei Bai's signature and fingerprint were on it. His fingertips traced inch by inch. It was as if he was caressing the girl's fingertips. In the end, a trace of grief appeared on Yu Xiaoyan's face. The man had become even thinner during this time. His movements were slow as he picked up the pen. The outline of the bones on his fingers was even more obvious. He was too thin. All of his vitality and warmth disappeared from his body. It was as if Yu Xiaoyan, who was sitting in front of the table and touching the table full of warm jade, was going to disappear at any time. Even Chen Shan couldn't bear to see this. Many brothers were waiting for Yu Xiaoyan to pull himself together. He had come here to advise him as well. But when he saw Yu Xiaoyan, however, no words of comfort or advice came out of his mouth. Yu Xiaoyan was already injured to the point that he was like a lonely soul. No matter how he advised the lonely soul to live, he was already living as if he was dead. Yu Xiaoyan's vision was a little empty. His slender fingers held the fountain pen and slowly began to write the contract for the transfer of property rights. Chen Shan watched as he read page by page. Everyone received a lot of things. In fact, the name Chen Shan actually replaced Yu Xiaoyan and Wei Wei Bai as the new leader of the group. Chen Shan's expression changed drastically. He was about to reach out to snatch the fountain pen in his hand. However, Yu Xiaoyan said slowly, "I'm still your boss." Chen Shan's entire body stiffened and his expression distorted. Read on. Come. Chapter 2741. But in the end, he didn't go forward to snatch it. Because Yu Xiaoyan said that before signing, before the property transfer contract had legal effect, he was still his boss. What decision did the boss make? They all had to obey, including, he gave up everything he had. Yu Xiaoyan's fingers trembled, and the veins on the back of his hand were exceptionally obvious. The man was extremely pale, and his fingers had no strength. During this period of time, he couldn't have peace day and night. Even his nightmares didn't look for him, because he didn't even have the strength to dream. Yu Xiaoyan pushed the property transfer contract to Chen Shan. From today onwards, I will retire. You guys do as you see fit. If there are any problems in the future, you guys can solve them yourselves. At this point, Yu Xiaoyan quietly raised his head and saw that Chen Shan, a man, was already crying like a child. Yu Xiaoyan smiled. That pair of gentle and beautiful eyes that were like a spring breeze. At this moment, there was no trace of affection in his smile. There was only numb calm. I've taught you guys for so long. It's time for me to rest. Chen Shan choked and said, "You're still young. You still have a lot of things to do. You can get through this." Yu Xiaoyan's finger landed on the medallion. Under his fingertips, the pure red color flowed with a beautiful light. There was nothing on the medallion. It was just a broken stone in a square shape. Yu Xiaoyan said calmly, "There's nothing else I want to do. Even if I do, no one will look at it." His entire life, he struggled bitterly in the darkness. From the moment he stepped into the Bai family, he had abandoned his conscience to live. He would be consigned to eternal damnation. After suffering for so many years, he had great power in his hands and was high and mighty. But he was waiting for someone to redeem him, pull him out of the darkness, love him with a completely unrecognizable person and a rotten heart. Yu Xiaoyan thought of the past, but he couldn't remember Wei Wei Bai's situation in the Bai family. Or rather, for the first time, he really had an impression of her. It was opening the wardrobe door. Her pair of innocent and clean eyes started from the moment his figure was imprinted on them. For a moment, he actually felt that. Everyone said that his eyes were good-looking. It turned out that there was someone whose eyes were much better looking than his. When she looked at him, it was as if she was in love with him. Yu Xiaoyan put aside the tassels he had made. He quietly lowered his eyes. There was no light in his eyes. "You may leave." His voice was indifferent. After Qin Shan left with tears streaming down his face, Yu Xiaoyan didn't move. He sat by the window and looked at the 100 pieces of jade jewelry. Chong Sam, bracelets, rings, necklaces, anklets, they were all designs that he liked. He liked the way it hung on her body even more. Yu Xiaoyan's aesthetic sense was somewhat Chinese. He liked jade stones and the like. His appetite had been spoiled by the Bai family. He had too many thoughts, too many calculations, and his sense of beauty was also unusually old-fashioned. The Bai family was the shame of his life. It was also the hell that had created everything for him. Yu Xiaoyan stared blankly out the window and suddenly saw the chestnut tree. The dense chestnut trees had already begun to bear fruit. In the past, she used to hide and cry down there. Little did he know that someone was watching him. Had she been looking at him for a long time, but he didn't care about her at all? If only I had liked her earlier, she wouldn't have been bullied so badly. Unfortunately, there were no ifs. Yu Xiaoyan smiled, but found that the corners of his mouth were unusually stiff. He slowly got up, like a lonely soul, and came to the chestnut tree. Yu Xiaoyan touched the tree trunk and looked around silently. Read on. Come. Chapter 2742. You can search Transmigration System. Prince Charming, come to the search website www.sashu.com in Baidu to find her. At that time, where was she hiding to look at him? Yu Xiaoyan suddenly coughed heavily. When he reached out to cover his mouth, he saw under the tree. A familiar tassel was tied to a branch. A smoky green Hatian jade magpie plum card was hanging from the tassel. It was the collar press he made for her. Why was it placed here? Yu Xiaoyan looked at the place where the jade pendant fell. It seemed to have been turned over. He stretched out his pale fingers and gently landed on the turned soil. After hesitating for a moment, he exerted force with his fingers and plunged them heavily into the soil. He almost couldn't wait to dig out the thing in the soil. It was a box. It was so shabby that it even matched a cheap box. When Yu Xiaoyan saw this box, he felt that it was too familiar, but also unfamiliar. It was too distant a memory that he couldn't remember what this box looked like. Yu Xiaoyan hesitated for a moment before opening the box. A brand new photo appeared in the box. The girl in the photo was wearing a light green Chong Sam, a smoky green magpie card, and a bracelet he made on her wrist. She was leaning against the armchair that he often sat in. She smiled brightly. When she took the photo, she had been nourished by him. Her slightly round face could already be foreseen as a beautiful color when she matured in the future. She was an exquisite girl, but her smile was exceptionally cute with a pure childishness. This photo, he didn't even know when she took the photo. Yu Xiaoyan was stiff for a long time before he reached out and picked up the photo. Under the box was an old family photo. The young him was sitting in an armchair. His parents stood on both sides of him, smiling exceptionally happily. He was also smiling happily. This was the last family photo of their family. At that time, his father was deeply trusted by the old master. He brought him and his mother to see the old master and took a photo in this armchair in the hall of the Bai family's old house. It was like a kind of honor. Ironically, not long after this photo was taken, his parents died under old Master Bai's scheme. Yu Xiaoyan looked at it for a long time. Only then did he realize the girl's posture, smile, and the position of the armchair. It was exactly the same as him. It was as if it was on purpose. She couldn't enter this family photo, so she took a picture of herself in the same pose as him. It was as if she could sit with him on the chair in the hall through a photo from many years ago, become a part of the family portrait. Yu Xiaoyan watched for a long time and also squatted under the tree for a long time. Finally, just like when he was a child, he stretched out his hands and hugged his knees tightly, burying his head in his knees. Without a sound, his entire body began to tremble violently. However, there was no sound of crying. "I love you," he said silently. Word by word, he spat out his blood. I love you, so don't abandon me again. Wei Wei Bai held her face in her hands and floated in the air, watching quietly. He said that he would take 3 days to complete the mission. She thought that after the funeral, she still couldn't leave. It had already been 3 months. She floated here. The system and the side missions were busy repairing the space-time tunnel. Although the time limit was only 3 days, she could only stay for 3 days. But because of the loss of control, the passage was hit by an unimaginably huge storm. The main system immediately gave all the raiders a break. Before the tunnel is repaired, none of the invaders were allowed to leave the plane. If they left now, they would also die. Therefore, it was rare that Wei Wei Bai still stayed by Yu Xiaoyan's side after her death. Wei Wei Bai watched expressionlessly. Chapter 2743. This action was a little intimate. Wei Wei Bai quickly withdrew her fingers. She didn't allow herself to be touched. After all, her man was waiting for her at home. Even if she felt that she was trash, she couldn't have any sympathy for him. Wei Wei Bai stared at him for a long time and felt a little tired. Like a cat, she yawned and sat beside the man. The system finally repaired the passage and rushed over. He was afraid that Wei Wei Bai would be bored in practice hanging upside down on the male lead. When he came back, he was stunned. Under the bleak corridor, the leaves fell in the cold wind. The man was sleeping quietly. Beside him, a girl in soul form was also leaning on his shoulder, sleeping peacefully. It was like an incomparably beautiful painting. It froze time and stunned time. The system blinked. For some reason, it felt a little sour at the corners of its eyes. Then it gently reached out, wanting to carry Wei Wei Bai back. A hand, out of nowhere, swept it away. The system rolled a few times, and when it stood up, a tall figure had already walked out of the sleeping Yu Xiaoyan's body. He bent down and gently picked her up. The girl's soul condensed into a beautiful white light. Let's go. Yi Yuxuan's voice was calm, but gentle. It was as if the damage in the plane to him couldn't compare to the moment of joy when he picked up Wei Wei Bai. The system's mouth twitched. The touched feeling just now was gone in an instant. As a system, the host was taken over by force every day. Could it still play properly? Yi Yuxuan was indifferent. The system immediately rolled up its sleeves and said enthusiastically, coming. In the blink of an eye, the space-time passage opened. The warm back view of a family of 3 disappeared on the spot. Not long after the space-time storm, the passage was a mess, full of space-time cracks. If you weren't careful, you might fall in. Those who were luckier would fall into another plane. A bad person might fall into a bottomless abyss, never to see the light of day again. If it was only the system, he would definitely be trembling in fear. However, there was a big boss in front of them. All he had to do was follow in his footsteps. Would Yi Yuxuan stand still? Then, she touched Wei Wei Bai's soul. This was a soothing power. Let her sleep deeper. Unknowingly, he had become more familiar with his own power. When he reached the door that was close to reality, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. Under Yi Yuxuan's thick and curved eyelashes, there was a golden halo in her eyes. At the border of reality, it was dark and quiet on one side. On one side was a land of bones. They had always been separated by a line that separated them into 2 worlds. However, at this moment, the pitch-black area at the entrance of reality was filled with floating golden light spots. Under the golden light, a few white bones were casually thrown into the dark path. Yi Yuxuan also noticed it. The red line on his wrist, Wei Wei Bai's red line, began to tighten. This power was much stronger than before. The person who was similar to him in the land of bones. He had always wanted to take her soul away. Yi Yuxuan felt danger. This kind of danger came from an instinctive warning from the depths of his soul. If he let go, he would never see her again. Yi Yuxuan believed this warning so much. The white bones fell into the darkness on this side. Perhaps the power of the line in the middle was beginning to be destroyed. To read the full article at https://www.sashu. Kanto TXT download at https://www. Sashu. Com to read on. Com to facilitate the next reading, you can click on. Chapter 2744. And this huge space-time storm may have been caused by this. Yi Yuxuan's fingers curled around the red thread, and then pulled it, not letting the red thread have any possibility of being dragged to the white bone land. Then he let the soul palm be cut. He still walked into the door with no expression. The white bone land was still desolate. The man sitting on the white bone throne, his golden eyes were dead silent. Finally, there was a fluctuation in those dead eyes. His eyelashes also trembled. As if he was awakened by something, the man finally looked up and looked behind the isolation line. The door of the reality. This time, he did not lower his eyes for a long time, but after staring for a long time, his fingertips moved. He seemed to want to stand up, but for some reason, he slowly closed his eyes again. Those golden light spots gathered around him again. The white bone land was still desolate, but his palm began to crack slowly. It was the scar of the soul. Wei Bai opened her eyes. Her vision was a little blurry. It was the light. It seemed to be night. She struggled to get up and called, Tongzi. The system was gnawing on a chicken leg, stealing it from the side quest. Once back in reality, he could not see the side quest refrigerator, so he took advantage of the time before returning, when the side quest was repairing the passage. He carried the refrigerator into his own space. This was also for the good of the side quest. With so many high-calorie things, he could not eat too much. These things had to be eaten by the malnourished. It just so happened that he was particularly malnourished. Then, he returned to the next seat and tried to eat all the things in the refrigerator. Wei Bai seemed to hear the sound of the system eating. She was silent for a while. She touched her stomach. She was hungry too. Then she asked, did Xian take sleeping pills? Although it seemed that she had not heard Qin Xiu for a while. She also did not see Yuxuan take any pills. But she was afraid that this thing would repeat. The system said, no, he's very obedient. What sleeping pills? He hugged the host and slept endlessly. Every day, he followed them across the plains and ran everywhere. He was extremely healthy. When Wei Bai heard this, she asked her father again. When the third day was up, his father happily came to visit again. So when Wei Bai went out in her slippers, she saw her father and Qin Xiu playing games. Qin Xiu, haha, I said this game is fun. Look, you can even change equipment. Bai Changyin, how can I change? I found it. I'll change it for a bikini. Wei Bai silently went behind the sofa and stuck her head out to take a look. Bai Changyin and Qin Xiu were playing a female game on their S. Furthermore, both of their characters were actually female. Bai Changyin's character was a 32D big-breasted beauty. She was walking around in a bikini. And Qin Xiu's character was a little cutie, wearing the clothes of a beautiful girl warrior. What burned her eyes was that Qin Xiu was also chatting with other little boys. Sob, sob, sob. Big brother, I've taken a fancy to that little angel's wings, but I don't have any coins left. The spendthrift brother in the game. Kiss me, and I'll give it to you. Qin Xiu immediately sent a voice message. Chirp, chirp, chirp. 3 kisses, I'll buy it. Wei Bai, wait, while she was asleep. What happened to her father and the attending doctor at home? Were they transmigrated, or were they coquettish in nature? Together, they broke their legs. Wei Bai coughed. /download the ad. https://m. Sashu. Collect below to record the reading record of this time. Chapter 2744 Reality 1. Chapter 2745. Bai Changyin's fingers trembled. Without turning his head, he immediately turned off the phone. Then he turned around and said with a guilty smile, Daughter, you're awake. I knew you would wake up today, so I bought groceries in advance to see you. Wei Bai calmly looked at Qin Xiu. Qin Xiu held the phone and slowly moved away a little. After confirming that he had received the gift of clothes from the little boy, he smiled and turned off the phone, saying, Your physical condition is very good, Wei. How could not be good? Her HP had already reached 13,000. Calculating it, it would be more than 35 years of life. In addition to her current age, A person with a short life could be counted as a lifetime. Wei Wei showed a gentle smile. Soon I will be able to recover, and you can go back to the hospital to help people in distress. Don't always lead my father astray. Qin Xiu, I'm taking your old father to play some games that are good for his body and mind. Wei Wei a transvestite, deceiving a little boy's poor pocket money to buy a little angel dress. Is this good for his body and mind? Seeing Changyan's guilty look and Qin Xiu's shameless appearance, Wei Wei calmly patted her old father's shoulder. Learn more, you're still young. As a businessman, how could he not be thick-skinned? No wonder their family's company has never been big. Then Wei Wei turned and walked to the kitchen. The system said, dinner time has passed, but no one has eaten, waiting for you to wake up. Yi Yuxuan is in the kitchen making soup for you. Wei Wei paused and couldn't help but look back. Then he saw Changyan and Qin Xiu happily playing with their S. She couldn't help but smile. She only felt that she had stepped through so many hardships and walked through so many strange worlds. In the end, she came back here. Everything was worth it. Every time she came back, she experienced the warmth of her family. It was more like a coordinate, a reminder, telling her all the time, this was where she had to come back and where she could finally return. Wei Wei walked into the kitchen. He heard the sound of something being thrown away. She poked her head out to take a look and saw a slender figure bending his body. His fingers were on the fridge door, and he was throwing a pile of things into a plastic bag. Wei Wei narrowed her eyes. There were a bunch of snacks, stimulating drinks, and sweet milk tea. There were even 2 burgers. Thinking of how Changyan said that he was going to buy groceries to see her, she knew that he must have bought a bunch of snacks. Meanwhile, Yi Yuxuan was destroying those snacks. After all, to prevent her from drinking the stimulant last time, he had shamelessly snatched it from her. Yi Yuxuan didn't like sweet, high-calorie, delicious but unhealthy food. He also felt that she shouldn't eat too much. He still needed to be taught. If they really got married in the future, would she have to follow his eating habits? Young man, you won't be able to get a wife like this. Wei Wei decided to teach him. So she quietly walked behind him and reached out to touch his back. The muscles on his back were warm, and the curve of his shoulder blades was exceptionally exquisite and sexy. Yi Yuxuan's back stiffened, and he knew that she was about to wake up. After getting out of bed, he immediately rushed to the kitchen and threw all these things away. Changyan and Qin Xiu were one step faster, and the fridge was already filled with their spicy chicken food. These were all Wei Wei's favorite foods. It wasn't that he didn't want to let her eat, but her body was special now, so he had to watch over her. He felt her fingers gently slide down his back little by little. /button. Chapter 2746. Yi Yuxuan's indifferent expression finally showed a trace of fluctuation. He pursed his lips and sighed. I won't throw it away, Wei said with a smile. Throw it away, continue to throw it away. Yi Yuxuan. Clearly, all of her actions would tell him not to throw it away. This was simply a suicidal choice. He felt that her hand had already reached an unspeakable place. He immediately opened his mouth, his voice incomparably hoarse. If you touch it again, I'll really throw it away. Wei Bai's fingers paused and then left his back. Yi Yuxuan breathed a sigh of relief. He was like a bomb to her, and she was still desperately trying to ignite the fire. Did she think that his self-control was too good? But in the next moment, a pair of hands gently followed his waist. The person behind him had already intimately attached herself to him. A warm and soft body, a familiar scent. His back was pressed by her like a big cat lying on his back. Yi Yuxuan had a helpless expression, but he couldn't help but smile. His indifferent eyes were filled with a gentle warmth. Wei hugged his waist tightly, her whole body pressed against his body. Her voice was soft and sweet. Brother, I want to drink milk tea. Yi Yuxuan's body stiffened. His breathing became heavier. Don't be like this. Wei giggled. Brother, buy me a small cake or a small biscuit, okay? Yi Yuxuan, Wei rubbed his firm and warm back, squinting her eyes and saying comfortably, Brother, I like to drink coffee and eat chocolate. As if accepting his fate, Yi Yuxuan took out the things in the plastic bag one by one. 2 boxes of chocolate, a cup of milk tea, a small cherry cake, spicy chicken feet, various biscuits, fragrant drinks, tooth decay candy. The refrigerator was quickly filled with a pile of junk food. Yi Yuxuan pursed his lips, his eyes unfriendly for a while, and then said helplessly, "Okay, stop rubbing." Wei Wei Bai imitated Qiu's cheap look. "Big brother is the best. Listen to me. I'll give you a kiss." Chirp, chirp, chirp. 3 heavy kisses landed on his back. Under his clothes, his muscles suddenly tightened. The system spat out its chicken drumstick. He thought that his tolerance level was high enough, but in the end, the host could always come up with even more disgusting methods to make him malnourished. What the hell is chirps? How old are you to play? Wei Wei Bai was done. She felt that this method was very useful. It was so disgusting that it made people listen to it. When Wei Wei Bai saw the refrigerator full of snacks, she couldn't help but reveal a wolfish grin. She was just about to let go of Yi Yuxuan. However, she found that the man's fingers were already clasped around hers. The next second, the fridge door was slammed shut. Bai Weiwei was pulled by him, clasped by the waist, and slammed into the refrigerator door. Behind her was the snow-white fridge door, but she saw Yi Yuxuan lowering his head. His eyes under his eyelashes were deep and dangerous. He said in a low voice, slowly and seductively, "Chirp?" When she said chirp, it was disgusting at first glance. Yi Yuxuan's voice gently rose, and when he said chirp in a hoarse voice, it was so sexy that it was obvious that it was used to seduce people. Wei Wei Bai's smiling face stiffened, and she immediately said, "I'm hungry." She started to change the topic. It couldn't be that she was disgusted by Qin Xiu, so she used this trick to disgust Yi Yuxuan. Yi Yuxuan's face was still calm. He slowly blinked, and his voice was a little vague. "Well, I'm hungry too." Wei Wei Bai, the experienced driver, don't think that she didn't know what he meant. Wei Wei Bai's breath also deepened. She raised her head, and her eyes curved. "Then what do you want to eat?" Her lips were red, as delicious as the cherries on the small cake that was about to be thrown away. He always knew, Yi Yuxuan thought. If she wanted to seduce a person, then everyone had to kneel under her skirt. This was also the reason why he knelt so many times. Yi Yuxuan's fingers gently ran through her long hair. His eyelashes were half closed, covering the fiery light in his eyes. And then he bowed his head and kissed the top of her head. Wei Wei Bai was stunned. This action was so gentle, it could be called pious. Chapter 2747. Wei Wei Bai was dragged out of the kitchen by Yi Yuxuan. She was still in a daze. While waiting for dinner, she finally came back to her senses and couldn't help but reach out to touch her hair. She looked at her fingers strangely. This kiss, it was not strange for Yi Yuxuan to kiss her. What was strange was that he used such a gentle attitude to kiss her hair. Yu Xiaoyan seemed to have this habit too. He would kiss her hair for no reason. To him, it seemed that this action represented some kind of deep and reserved love. Yi Yuxuan was just cold and indifferent, without much emotional fluctuation, although he was gradually becoming more like a human. But his actions were the same as Yu Xiaoyan's. Wei Wei Bai stared at the table in front of her and suddenly took out her laptop to go to the shopping website. As a girl, it was rare for her to have free time. Of course, she would buy something to relax. Unknowingly, she made handmade nephrite jade lapel pressing. One after another, some of them were eye-piercing, some of them were garish, and some of them were garish. It was really ugly. Many of these jades were glass products at first glance, or they were pressed with jade powder. Wei Wei Bai felt that her eyes were spoiled. They were so ugly that she couldn't bear to look at them directly. She could only look at the most expensive ones. Finally, she saw a few that were pleasing to the eye, although the picture filters were particularly heavy. As she flipped through, she saw a design that was very similar to Yu Xiaoyan's style. She asked the system, "Does this look good?" The system was drinking bird's nest soup with lobster fried rice and abalone stewed soup. It said, "It's okay." Wei Wei Bai. "Then which one do you think looks good?" The system, the colorful one just now looks good. It was the one that was dyed at first glance. A piece of plastic dyed with a rainbow color was really good looking. Wei Wei Bai felt that the system's aesthetic was really worrying. It didn't have her elegant and beautiful taste at all. Well, that piece of plastic was dyed really well. After Yushuan finished washing his hands, he came out and said coldly to the old couple, who were laughing and laughing, "Okay, go and serve the dishes." Bai Changyan and Qin Xiu immediately put down their phones. The two of them quickly ran into the kitchen like the waiter. One of them carried the rice pot, while the other carried 3 dishes. Basically, all the servants in the apartment had been chased away. Only a housekeeper from a Yi family was left. She came 3 times a day, but this time, Wei Wei Bai woke up late. The nanny left. Yi Yushuan prepared the meal herself. Wei Wei Bai was waiting to eat. No one dared to let her into the kitchen. No matter how clean the kitchen was, there should still be detergent. Who would dare to eat the dishwashing detergent one day if she poured it into a pot as a condiment? No, Yi Yushuan dared to eat it. Then, he continued to squat in the hospital and had his stomach pumped. Yi Yushuan saw Wei Wei Bai lying on the sofa, looking at her laptop. He walked over and casually put down his sleeves. Reaching out, he gently ran his fingers through her long hair and stroked her head. "I'll look at it after dinner." His voice was calm, but unusually gentle. Wei Wei Bai was not used to it. She reached out and scratched her hair. Then she looked up and said with a smile, "Well, okay." Yi Yushuan casually looked at the computer screen. "Do you like these?" His tone was normal and unusually calm. Bai Wei Wei narrowed her eyes, her finger carelessly touching one of the photos. "This one looks good. What do you think?" Warm brown with a rustling matte light. A small square of sugar jade. Pure black tassels hanging below. An unusually beautiful and clean design, similar to the style designed by Yu Xiaoyan. Chapter 2748. Yi Yushuan casually glanced at it and said indifferently, "It looks good. I'll buy it for you. What else do you like? Put it in the shopping cart and clear it out together." Bai Wei Wei casually swept her eyes over his handsome face, which barely had any fluctuations. After looking at it for a while, she suddenly smiled. "If you don't like it, you can make it for me." Yi Yushuan's eyelashes fluttered. It was a strange expression that was not obvious. Even before Wei Wei Bai noticed it, it disappeared. He grabbed her arm and pulled her up from her prone position. He helped her sit up with strength and agility. "When I buy the materials, I'll make it for you," Yi Yushuan said indifferently. Wei Wei Bai stared at him for a while, then said with a smile, "Well, let's eat." Then she tugged at his sleeve, got up, and walked to the dining table. Bai Changyan had already brought the last dish. Qin Xiu was filling the bowl. "It's time to eat," the attending doctor shouted. Wei Wei Bai walked over, pulled out a chair, and sat down. Yi Yushuan, who followed behind, looked at her back, and a trace of thought appeared in his eyes. Where did he reveal a flaw? Wei Wei's action just now, was she suspicious? The jade tassels were Yu Xiaoyun's handiwork, not his. She had always avoided bringing too much of everything in that world to reality. She would not ask him to do the same things as the people in that world, unless she was suspicious. Could it be that guy, who was neither a man nor a woman, told her something? Yi Yushuan's fingers touched the back of the chair, and just as he was about to pull it out, his eyes fell on his fingers. Suddenly he woke up. The way he kissed her hair and smoothed it with his fingers was too similar to that of Yu Xiaoyan in that world. It was exactly the same. Every time he came back from that world, he would be unable to control himself and be affected. No matter how cautious he was, he would occasionally miss some small habits that would remain. Moreover, before he discovered these little habits, he would not think too much about them, because of the familiarity that was almost integrated into the soul. Yi Yushuan's expression was indifferent. She slowly pulled out a chair. Then he sat down and picked up his chopsticks to pick up some food for Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai didn't say anything else. She had always been good at hiding things. Yi Yushuan's eyes were calm. If she was suspicious, she would observe little by little instead of questioning, because that was the only way to kill in one strike. How could he dispel her suspicions? It was rare for Yi Yushuan to be troubled. After the meal, Qin Xiu automatically cleaned up the dishes. Bai Changyan assisted. The two of them happily went to wash the dishes. Meanwhile, Yi Yuxuan was on the phone, giving orders remotely. She also asked someone to release some jade stones or something. The staff members who were instructed were already used to these inexplicable instructions. After all, he had even bought love slippers, love toothbrushes, towels, and so on. All that was left was the day when the boss would order her to buy a love condom. Their work was very professional. They could guarantee that they could do what they were told, and they could even hold back their laughter. Yi Yuxuan was busy with his work. Wei Wei Bai wanted to lie down and become salted fish after eating. She was too tired in the plane, so she wanted to rest when she came to reality. She didn't know what the system was eating, although Wei Wei Bai was still willing to let Tongzi eat better now. But from the time she came back until she was full, surprisingly, he could still hear the sound of the system. Like a mouse, it was still eating. It couldn't be that it would eat all her life points before it stopped, right? Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but ask the system, "How much life points have you eaten?" The download. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.